My name is Mia, I'm in my 50s, living alone since my husband passed away from a heart attack a few years ago. My son, Mason, got married and moved out. While I don't want him to live with me, I do feel lonely sometimes. Part of the reason I didn't want him to stay was because I've seen how difficult relationships between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law can be. My own mother was harassed, and it made me cautious. I wasn't very close to my grandmother either, so I understand family conflicts well. To be honest, I don't get along with Mason's wife, Emily. She often speaks in a way that feels superior, and I felt we weren't a good match. Here's what happened the first time I met her. During a family meeting, Mason introduced her. "This is my fiancée, Emily. Isn't she beautiful, Mom?" he said. "Nice to meet you, Emily," I replied politely. "I'm glad Mason is getting married. Let's have coffee and chat." Emily smiled and said, "Thank you," as I offered some snacks. I brought out a cheesecake I'd made. "Did you make this, Mia?" Emily asked. "Yes, it's my signature cheesecake. I hope you like it," I replied. Emily took a bite and frowned. "Handmade sweets seem so poor," she said. Then, she laughed. Mason joined in, saying, "Mom loves making everything by hand. It's kind of funny." I was stunned. I'd always loved baking and had fed Mason homemade food when he was young. Had he always thought this way? Emily even spit out the cheesecake she'd tasted and laughed again. It was hurtful and rude. Emily, according to Mason, comes from a good family, but her words and actions are often unpleasant. Since their wedding, she always makes sarcastic remarks whenever we meet, which is exhausting. I also don't get along with her parents. Emily's mother, Elizabeth, looks down on me for working at my age. She once said, "It must be tough still working in your 50s. I guess you're not getting much survivor benefits since your husband passed away." I tried to keep calm and responded, "I enjoy working." Elizabeth smirked and continued, "Women are happiest when they're housewives. Working mothers like you probably couldn't give Mason much love." I replied, "That's not true. I loved Mason dearly." But she dismissed me, saying, "Working mothers always cut corners." I'm glad Emily is a proper housewife now. Women should quit their jobs and focus on the household. Elizabeth, though the same age as me, has very old-fashioned views. It's not wrong to be a housewife, but the way she judges others' lifestyles as if she's an expert is annoying. Her husband, Logan, also acts like he's above everyone else, being the president of a mid-sized company. Overall, dealing with Emily and her family has been a tiring experience. I wish Elizabeth would just mind her own business. Somehow, I ended up agreeing to go on a trip with Emily's annoying parents, which has left me confused. It's the year-end holidays, and I had some time off work. Out of the blue, Elizabeth called and invited me on the trip. To make it more awkward, they had already booked a luxury hotel and airline tickets, so I felt like I had no choice but to go along with it. On the day of the trip, I arrived at the airport terminal just before the scheduled 10 a.m. meeting time. Soon, Mason, Emily, Logan, and Elizabeth arrived, carrying large bags. "Thank you for inviting me," I said. "I feel a bit guilty, though." Elizabeth waved it off. "Oh, don't mention it. Let's board. Here are the tickets we bought in advance." She handed tickets to everyone, except me. "Oh, sorry, Mia," she said casually. "I forgot to buy your airplane ticket. You'll have to get there by boat. It'll take 10 hours. "What?" I exclaimed, shocked. Emily laughed. "Mom, making Mia take a boat is hilarious. It suits her." Mason added, "We'll wait for you in Los Angeles." I was stunned. "Are you guys really okay with this? You're just leaving me behind?" Elizabeth shrugged. "We won't have any issues. Just remember, if your back hurts from the boat ride, that's not our problem. See you there." As they walked through the gate laughing, I stood there alone, gripping my phone in anger. Why did I have to endure such cruelty? I'd hoped this trip would be a chance to get along better with everyone, but instead, I was being treated like a fool. No, the truth is, I'd been foolish to believe they had good intentions in the first place. I realized Logan and Elizabeth must have planned to bully and exclude me from the beginning. I was furious and thought, I won't let this slide. I'll get back at them and make sure they can't retaliate. Muttering to myself, I must have looked like an angry old lady as I walked home, my face tight with frustration. When I got home, I put my phone aside, quickly finished some work, and took a short nap. After I woke up, I noticed my phone was flooded with WhatsApp notifications. Curious, I checked, and all the messages were from Elizabeth. I'd turned off notifications while sleeping, so I hadn't noticed them earlier. When I called her back, Elizabeth answered, furious. How dare you do that to me, she yelled. What are you talking about? I replied. Don't act innocent. You uploaded that conversation online, didn't you? Oh, you mean the short video? Yeah, it's going viral. It's even trending on major forums now, I said calmly. What did you just say? Elizabeth was outraged. There's even a thread calling me the evil witch aunt, and it's already up to part 10. Where do they get off calling me that? I'm a classy and refined lady. You didn't realize you were mean? That's the real issue here, I said flatly. Elizabeth continued her rant. Thanks to you, I've been bombarded with messages from friends who saw that video. It's ruining my vacation. Oh, is that so? I replied, feigning concern. But let's be clear, the one at fault here is you, Elizabeth. I just uploaded the audio. And no, it wasn't illegal or anything. Elizabeth was furious. You're the real evil witch. You're just jealous, because you're not as wealthy as I am. You envy everything about me, don't you? I kept calm. Actually, I'm not envious at all. But Elizabeth, you're the one being deceived by Logan. She paused, shocked. What do you mean? She demanded. My late husband cherished me deeply, but Logan? He has someone more important to him than you. What are you talking about? His affair partner, I said bluntly. What? Elizabeth's voice wavered. The real reason for this trip was so Logan could secretly meet a woman there, I explained. Elizabeth was speechless. I knew about Logan's affair because the woman had posted videos with him on a site I often browse. She appeared to be in her late 20s, not much older than their daughter, Emily. It was disturbing to see such a relationship. While I couldn't post explicit details online, the linked blog painted a clear picture. It was full of entries describing their time together, explicitly and shamelessly. I sent the blog link to Elizabeth. Go ahead, read it, I said. Elizabeth opened the link, and soon I could hear her screaming in horror. It was almost unbearable. Apparently, Logan had told her he was taking a short walk, but instead, he'd gone to meet the woman. While Elizabeth was still on the phone with me, Logan returned to the hotel room. Oh, what a lovely view I just saw on my walk, Logan said casually. Elizabeth snapped. Where were you? Were you really just walking alone? Yes, of course. Did you want to come next time? Logan said nervously. Don't lie to me. What's this diary I'm reading? You were with the woman who wrote it, weren't you? Well, Logan stammered. Explain yourself, Elizabeth shouted. Why is your affair partner here? Look, it's not what it seems. I met her during a business trip. We had drinks, and we got friendly, but it's nothing serious. Logan tried to defend himself. Nothing serious? This diary says otherwise. You're disgusting, Elizabeth yelled. Then Logan blurted out something shocking. Well, Mason did the same thing. Wait, what? Elizabeth froze. Logan suddenly spilled the beans. Mason was at the bar with me, drinking and flirting with women. After that, we both went to that kind of place. Elizabeth was shocked. What did you just say, Mason? What does this mean? Emily turned to Mason, furious. Is this true? Mason tried to defend himself. Emily, calm down. I didn't do anything. I was just drinking with a woman. That's all. Logan smirked. Oh no, if I'm going down, I'm taking you with me. Mason panicked. Why are you dragging me into this? I'm your son-in-law. Defend me. Logan shot back. Shut up. This is all your mother's fault. Emily was devastated. Mason, I thought we were happy, and now I find out you've been lying to me? It turned out Logan and Mason's companies had a business relationship, so they often spent time together. However, their business trips were more than they seemed. During one trip, both companies had run into trouble and had to apologize to a client. Conveniently, the client was located in the same area as their vacation spot. After handling the apology, Logan and Mason decided to drink, flirt with women, and have secret relationships. This wasn't a one-time thing, they'd been visiting privately multiple times. Emily's voice shook with anger. So when you two said you were surfing and snorkeling together, that was a lie? Mason looked cornered. Well, what about the mountain climbing? Emily pressed. That was a lie too, Mason admitted. Emily exploded. This is too much. I can't believe this. Mason tried to shift the blame. See, I didn't do anything worse than Logan. Logan laughed. Oh, Mason, we both know what you've done. Don't make me spill all the details. Mason begged. Please don't say anything more. I was shocked. Mason wasn't just my son-in-law, but someone Logan seemed to admire. To think they'd both been going there repeatedly to meet women disgusted me. Even this supposed family vacation to Los Angeles was just a cover to meet their mistresses. The thought made me sick. Realizing how much of a fool I'd been for trusting these people, I felt pathetic, but before I could process it further, Elizabeth started yelling on the phone again. "This mess is your fault, Mia. Apologize." "No," I replied firmly, "I won't apologize." Elizabeth was furious. "You're just jealous, because you're poor. You're trying to ruin my family. You're a demon." I snapped back. "If anyone's a demon, it's you, Elizabeth. Haven't you been flirting with a young man yourself?" Elizabeth faltered. "What? That's ridiculous. One of your employees told me you approached him and," I trailed off, letting her panic set in. Elizabeth was shocked when I revealed the truth. "Wait, your company's employee? What do you mean?" she stammered. "Yes," I replied calmly, "I'm the CEO of XX Foods. You may have thought I was just a part-timer, but I actually run the place." Elizabeth gasped. "The famous XX Foods? You're the CEO?" "Yes, I worked my way up and now lead the company. I'm far from struggling, and I certainly don't envy you, especially not after what you did to one of my employees." Elizabeth's face turned pale. "I didn't do anything wrong." I crossed my arms. "Really? You approached him while he was cleaning the entrance and made him deeply uncomfortable. He told me what you did, and frankly, it was completely inappropriate." Elizabeth began to panic. "Oh no. I'll apologize, please. I swear it won't happen again." "It's not up to me to forgive you," I said coldly. "That's up to my employee." Elizabeth had been harassing Alexander, a young man on cleaning duty at my company. She would show up every Monday when he was scheduled and behave inappropriately toward him. Alexander didn't know how to respond since she was an older woman and feared any reaction might backfire. The stress eventually took a toll on him, and he went on leave. When Alexander emailed me photos and explained the situation, I was furious. I decided to act. With Alexander's consent, I forwarded his photos and story to Logan via WhatsApp. Chaos erupted. Logan shouted at Elizabeth, "What were you thinking, going after a younger man? You're a disgrace." Elizabeth tried to deflect. "It wasn't just me, he had a part in it too." Logan didn't buy it. "Stop lying, you're nothing but a creepy old stalker." But Elizabeth fired back. "Oh, you're one to talk. You've been having an affair too, and don't forget, you owe me hundreds of thousands in alimony." Logan smirked. "You're not getting a dime from me. I don't need you either." Elizabeth snapped. "Wait, Emily, don't call me that," Logan growled, cutting her off. What followed was a massive argument at the luxury hotel in Los Angeles. Eventually, Logan and Elizabeth divorced. Logan had been unfaithful, so Elizabeth received alimony. However, she didn't get to keep it for long. Alexander sued her for harassment and won damages, which essentially meant Elizabeth had to use her alimony to pay him. Later, Elizabeth came to me, asking for a job. "Please, I need work," she pleaded. I refused. "I don't need someone like you causing trouble." As for my family, my son divorced Emily after it came to light she was pregnant, but not with his child. Their relationship was a mess, and my son's actions disappointed me deeply. I wondered where I went wrong raising him, but I reminded myself he was an adult and responsible for his own choices. Now that I've had my revenge, I'm ready to focus entirely on my work as a CEO. The future is mine to shape.
It's wonderful to escape from being stressed by her wedding. These are the kind of posts I would end up seeing from my family members who didn't show up to my wedding. My relationship with my family has always been awkward. When I stepped into my family home one day, the conversation in the living room where my family was relaxing suddenly stopped. My brother Benjamin and his wife Camila exchanged meaningful glances, and my mother Diana put on a stiff smile. "Oh, Eliza, you're unusually early today," my mother said. "Is work finished?" I let out a small sigh. "Yes, I finished early today. I wanted to have dinner at home." My father Victor snorted without looking up from his newspaper. "All a miracle." Our lawyer deigns to look up from her law books. "Dad," as I was about to speak, Benjamin interrupted. "Eliza, tell me about your meeting this morning. Did you sue another company?" He then explained to his wife Camila, "Eliza only talks about numbers. She has a special talent for ruining the mood at parties." Camilla laughed softly. That's right. At the last holiday party, she went on and on about contract clauses. Half of the guests left. I tried to make an excuse but gave up. Conversations with my family were always like this. At the dinner table, Benjamin's children were running around. Camilla was enthusiastically talking about summer vacation plans, and my father and mother occasionally nodded. Even when I tried to avoid work topics and have a normal conversation, silence quickly fell. Eliza is always too serious, Camilla interjected. You should learn to have a little fun. Life isn't just about work. Benjamin made an exaggerated gesture toward his children. Look, kids, don't be like your aunt. Always work, work, work. She even forgets how to smile. The children laughed innocently, and I lowered my eyes to my glass of water. They should have known that I was helping with their living expenses, this despite me paying for my own law school tuition and building my own career. But in their eyes, I was just the boring, serious eldest daughter. That night, as I was leaving, my father unusually called out to me. By the way, about the cost of Benjamin's birthday party next month, you'll help out a bit, won't you? I nodded quietly. My relationship with my family was always like this. My value of existence was proportional to the thickness of my wallet, but the day would come when my family's attitude would change dramatically. This mess started about 2 months ago. My father, Victor, began acting strange whenever conversations about my upcoming wedding came up. He wasn't acting strange in a bad way, but he was certainly secretive in a suspicious way. Whispering on the phone, closing his laptop when I walked into his office, that sort of thing. My sister-in-law Camilla started giving me these little smiles and saying stuff like, Eliza, you're going to love what we're planning for your big day. Even my brother Benjamin, who's usually too absorbed in his investment banking work to care about family stuff, was dropping hints. I'm not going to lie, it got me excited. Your wedding is supposed to be a milestone, right? My family wasn't wealthy, and I was independent, so I wasn't expecting anything extravagant. All the secrecy had me thinking maybe they were planning an amazing bridal shower or rehearsal dinner. My father kept telling me to be patient whenever I tried to fish for details. To be honest, I was surprised that my family showed interest in my marriage. I'm planning to have a family dinner to introduce my fiancé. You absolutely have to come, Dad. I insisted over the phone a month ago. Of course, Eliza, my father answered. I'll definitely come if work finishes early. However, on the promised day, he sent me a message. I'm sorry, but I forgot I had a golf appointment with my friend Bob. Let's meet on the wedding day. I sighed. This wasn't the first time. My father always prioritized his work and hobbies over important events in my life. And so, the dinner with my fiancé got canceled due to my father's scheduling conflict. On my wedding day, no one was at the venue. I couldn't see my family anywhere. Mom, Dad, Benjamin, Camilla, Adrian, and Sophia, none of them had come. I stood there in my dress, holding my bouquet, staring at the empty rows. Something might have happened, I thought, and called my father on my cell phone. It got rejected. The same thing happened when I called my mother. I sent texts to Benjamin and Camilla, but there was no reply. James, my husband-to-be, squeezed my hand. His calm eyes reassured me. Eliza, don't worry. Something must have happened. They wouldn't intentionally not come, he said. James's suit was tailor-made, and his gentle smile was just for me. His parents looked concerned, but James was decisive, and we decided to proceed with the ceremony as planned. Feeling the absence of my family, I said, I do, in front of the empty rows. James's hand firmly held mine, and the look in his eyes told me that I was enough, even without my family. The wedding was still completed successfully without my family. However, I couldn't sit still thinking about them. After returning to our new home with James after the ceremony, I remembered I actually have an Instagram account. I don't post much, I just follow my family members' accounts to check on their lives sometimes. And there it was, posted 3 hours earlier, a photo of my entire family: dad, Benjamin, Camila, mom, Adrian and Sophia, all smiling in front of a medieval chateau, wine glasses raised, at an exclusive French estate. Benjamin had captioned it, "The perfect family vacation without her." The comments made my blood boil. Dad replied with, "She's too busy anyway," and a laughing emoji. Camila added something about career-obsessed women not appreciating family traditions. Mom commented, "It's wonderful to escape from being stressed by her wedding." She was there in the photos, looking completely relaxed in her designer sunglasses. James held me tightly. Looking at the photos together, he seemed unable to contain his anger. "I can't believe they would do this," he frowned. "Eliza, this shows how little they value you." "But I'm different. You mean everything to me." He sat beside me and gently stroked my hair as he saw my trembling hands hold a glass. "No one has the right to hurt you. You're an amazing person. I'm lucky to be able to see what they don't deserve to see." His words were comforting, but the pain in my heart didn't disappear. I sat there for I don't know how long, my throat tight, just scrolling through more photos they'd posted. Vineyard tours, river cruises, family portraits, all time stamped and geo-tagged to a chateau I'd never even heard of, starting 2 days earlier. I don't know what kicked in: shock, rage, or some weird sense of calm, but I didn't call them, didn't text, didn't comment on the photos. Just poured another glass of champagne with my trembling hands and started thinking hard. James brought hot chocolate from the kitchen and sat next to me. He gave me advice on gathering evidence from his perspective as a company executive. "In situations like this, it's important to act based on facts rather than being swept away by emotions," he said. "As an excellent lawyer, you probably understand, but now we need to keep records of everything from a legal perspective." He took out his tablet and logged into the company's internal system. "I shouldn't really be showing you this," he said hesitantly. "This is your father's activity record at our company. It shows how his decisions have negatively impacted us." At that moment, I realized for the first time that he wasn't just an executive, but at the top level of the company. The access to the information he showed me was not something a normal executive would have. "James, are you?" He smiled slightly. "Yes, I was recently promoted. It's not officially announced yet, but I've become your father's direct superior. Actually, I've become the CEO." I was surprised, but he quickly added, "But there's something more important right now, and that's to protect you. I can't allow them to treat you like this." His kindness and determination gave me strength. The first thing I did was to check the bank account that I've been using to support my family's living expenses. As expected, $400 was transferred to my father's personal account last Friday. I scrolled back through older social media posts and found out Mom had been making comments about a special family retreat for weeks. So this wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. Planned without me. Planned around me. Planned despite my wedding. By midnight, my hurt had transformed into white-hot determination. I opened my laptop and started documenting everything: screenshots of posts, financial transfers, a timeline of the lies they'd told me about wedding surprises. I rarely cry, but I felt hot tears burning behind my eyes. Not sad tears, angry ones. "What do you think we should do now?" I asked James while looking at the computer. "First, let's prepare to protect yourself legally. Then, when the time comes, we'll show them the truth. But for now, let's rest. Tomorrow will be a long day." He put his arm around my shoulder and led me to the bedroom. 3 days after the wedding, I suddenly received messages from my family. Dad texted asking if I was upset about something. Camila called twice. Benjamin sent a message saying, "Dad's getting worried. Can you just respond?" I didn't answer. Instead, I posted my first Instagram photo in months, just me at my apartment with wedding sample decorations I'd selected myself. No caption, no tags, just a date stamp. That's when the flood began. At exactly 9:44 p.m., my phone exploded with notifications. Message after message came. Dad was in complete panic mode. Benjamin actually sounded concerned for once. Camila sent voice messages that grew increasingly desperate. By midnight, I counted 290 messages across all platforms: texts, WhatsApp, Instagram DMs, emails, even voicemails. The last one from Dad just said, "We're coming back tomorrow. We need to talk." James was sitting next to me in the living room, watching my expression with concern. Actually, James made his move the day after our wedding. He woke up early that day, and after taking a shower, he quietly made a phone call in the corner of the living room. I was still in bed, just waking up from the previous day's fatigue. I noticed that his tone was different from usual. It was businesslike and calm, yet it had an unwavering strength. "Yes, Victor," I heard James's voice. "The decision remains unchanged. From Monday, you will be transferred to the regional branch. Your future will be considered based on your performance there." I was fully awake the moment I heard him say my father's name. Jumping out of bed and heading to the living room, I saw James holding the phone with a serious expression. He saw me, gave a small nod, and continued the call. "No, this is not personal. It's purely a matter of performance and compliance," he said calmly. "Your department has failed to meet targets for 3 consecutive quarters. Furthermore, there have been violations of the company's ethics code." The voice from the phone grew louder. It sounded like my father was shouting. James remained calm and switched the phone to speaker mode. "You don't have the authority." My father's voice echoed throughout the room. "I've supported this company for 20 years. You're just a Victor," James calmly interrupted. "I was officially appointed as the CEO 3 months ago. All personnel decisions are within my authority." After a moment of silence, my father's voice changed. This time it was mixed with fear. "Wait, James. There must be some misunderstanding. I was just." "You skipped a family wedding to go on a European vacation," James said sternly. "Our company upholds the value of cherishing family. You fail to uphold even that basic principle." "Wedding?" My father's voice sounded confused. "What wedding?" James looked at me, his expression softening slightly. "Eliza's wedding. Your daughter's." On the other end of the phone, something fell. Then my mother's voice was heard from a distance. "Victor, what happened?" "Eliza's wedding? Why would?" My father sounded completely shocked. James reached out to me, and I sat next to him. "I am James Ryan, your superior and your son-in-law." After a complete silence, frantic voices were heard from the phone. It seemed like my father was hurriedly explaining something to my mother. Benjamin's voice could also be heard in the background. They were clearly agitated. But my father returned to the phone, his voice now trembling. "Why didn't anyone tell me? That Eliza and you, I didn't know. We sent the invitations 3 months ago. I spoke for the first time." There was no response. I also called Mom to confirm, but was told you were busy. "Eliza." My father gasped. "You were there. Listen, this is all a misunderstanding. We were just on vacation. I didn't know your fiancé was James, or that he was my boss." At that moment, there was a sudden movement on the other end of the phone, and we could hear Benjamin's voice. "James, Eliza, listen. We learned in Europe that Dad was being demoted. Everyone was upset, and we tried to contact you, but you canceled my wedding," I said in an icy voice. "You didn't think about the most important event in my life at all." "Eliza," my mother started speaking. "We were just enough," James said before hanging up. "Victor, I expect a report from the regional branch on Monday." When the call ended, I buried my face in my knees. James sat beside me and put his arm around my shoulders. "Honestly, I didn't think your father wouldn't recognize me. He had met me in board meetings and should have known I was a member of the management team. I guess he really didn't consider you in his life at all, Eliza." Paul's words pierced my heart. My father couldn't even remember my fiancé's face. 3 hours later, our smartphones kept ringing. 290 desperate messages from my father, mother, Benjamin, and Camila. They suddenly realized my importance because my husband had the power to affect their livelihood. "What are you going to do?" James asked, gently stroking my shoulder. "I'll ignore them," I said with determination. "Just as they ignored my wedding, I'll ignore their messages." James smiled slightly and kissed me. I finally understood. They didn't even know who my fiancé was. In the past, I felt like I was only a supporting character for my family. But now I have finally become the protagonist. And with my partner James, I was ready to start a new life. I've been loyal to my family for years. Never once have I deliberately ignored my father when he needed legal help. We spent that evening building my legal protection strategy. I called my bank and removed my family members' access to my accounts. Around midnight, I discovered an email thread between Dad and Benjamin from 2 weeks earlier. "Dad, should we even tell Eliza about the France trip?" "Benjamin, why bother? She'll just worry about her wedding." "Dad, true LOL. It's not like she ever focuses on anything but legal matters anyway." "Benjamin, she probably won't notice we're gone until after her wedding." "Dad, I think you're right. LOL." That was the moment something inside me crystallized. I'd been holding on to a tiny hope that maybe everything was just a big misunderstanding. But that email destroyed it. On the day they were supposed to return, I was waiting in my apartment. James said he had work and promised to join me in the evening. At 4:32 p.m., I heard multiple voices in the elevator of my building. The wheels of suitcases rolled on marble and the intercom rang. I slowly responded. When I opened the door, there was an unnatural scene of jet-lagged, exhausted faces forcing cheerful smiles. My father was clutching a gift bag that had obviously not been in his original luggage. "Eliza?" My father said in a forcefully bright voice. "Why didn't you answer the phone? I wanted to ask you about my job." I stared at them with a cold expression. My mother looked apologetic, and Camila was staring at the floor. Only Benjamin hadn't completely abandoned his somewhat arrogant attitude. As tense conversation began at the doorway, the elevator doors opened again, and James appeared. Wearing a suit, his expression was stern when he saw my father. "Victor," he said calmly. My father's face was drained of color. "James," he choked. "Is it true what was written in that email? Are you together?" James stood next to me and put his arm around my shoulder. "Victor, I am Eliza's husband. The wedding was 4 days ago. You were invited, but it seems you prioritize your vacation in France." My father's face was twisted with fear and confusion. "Eliza, is he really my company CEO?" I said calmly. "Yes, he is. But you know what? You chose traveling over my wedding. And now you've come to complain about James demoting you?" Benjamin stepped forward. "Eliza, listen. We didn't know your fiancé was actually Dad's boss. Otherwise, that has to be a blatant lie," I said firmly. "James' promotion was decided last month. His name was circulating in the company emails. The reason you know nothing about my fiancé is because you have no interest in my life." My father said in a trembling voice, "Eliza, we're family." "Family helps each other, right?" James calmly said. "Victor, someone who doesn't value family has no right to talk about family." As those words echoed in the hallway, complete silence fell. My father's shoulders slumped, and despair spread across his face. My mother covered her mouth with her hand, letting out an uncontrollable sob. Even Benjamin lost his usual arrogance and dropped his gaze to the floor. "I notified you when you were in France last week," James continued calmly. "Employees who don't value family are not needed in the company. You are to be demoted to a rural subsidiary. It was only after you received that notice that you suddenly started to care about your daughter's wedding." Camila said in a small voice, "We didn't know." Victor suddenly said we had to go back. James looked at her, his expression softening slightly. "Please leave now. Eliza has been hurt enough." My father took a step back and dropped the gift bag. Its contents were scattered on the floor, but no one tried to pick them up. My crying mother grabbed my father's arm and pulled him toward the elevator. "Eliza," Benjamin said finally. "Can I talk? Get out," I said quietly but firmly. They slumped their shoulders and hung their heads as they entered the elevator. The last scene visible through the closing doors was my father's devastated expression and my mother's tear-soaked face. Benjamin was supporting Camila, who was crying like a child. When the door closed, James gently embraced me. "Are you okay?" he asked kindly. "I'm fine," I answered. I'm no longer an invisible presence. That's all I need. Looking out the window, I could see them walking through the lobby with heavy steps toward a taxi. My father no longer looked arrogant, he just looked like an old man. Watching them get into the taxi and drive away in the rain, I felt true freedom for the first time. 1 month after the wedding, their situation had visibly deteriorated. James and I were having coffee at the breakfast table, discussing my father's situation. On James' laptop was my father's performance report, and the numbers were harsh. He only lasted 2 weeks at the regional branch, James said quietly. He was late every day, and even fell asleep in meetings. Yesterday, he formally submitted his resignation. I picked up my coffee cup and stared at the steam, as expected. James took my hand. "Do you regret it?" "No," I shook my head. "They made their choices. I just made mine." As we were preparing to go to work after breakfast, my new phone rang. It was my mother's number. After exchanging glances with James, I answered on speaker mode. Eliza, please listen. My mother's voice sounded tired and thin. Your father quit his job. We're financially struggling. We can't make our mortgage payments and our credit card debt is growing. Could you help us a little? James silently looked at me, nodding slightly to indicate that he was leaving this decision to me. How much do you need? I asked calmly. About $3,000 this month, my mother said in a small voice. It's temporary. Your father will find a new job soon. I struggled to contain my laughter. $3,000. Almost exactly the same amount as their luxury hotel bill in France. Tell me honestly why you need the money, I said. I told you, mortgage and the real reason, I interrupted her. What is father trying to do after James demoted him? After a long silence, my mother sighed. He has contacted a competitor. He's planning to sell confidential information from James' company. We need money for a lawyer. I could see James's expression hardening. He quickly began taking notes and gestured that he would contact the legal department. I see. That was all I said. Mom, you just admitted to conspiracy in corporate espionage and industrial spying. This call is being recorded. Eliza, my mother gasped. How could you record a family conversation? How ironic, I said coldly. A family who chose traveling over my wedding is now bringing up family. That evening, James and I were drinking wine on the penthouse balcony, gazing at the city lights. He put his arm around my shoulder and pulled me close. What do you think? I asked. Do you think they'll give up? They have nothing left to lose, James said quietly. That's the most dangerous kind of person. 2 days later, I received a direct call from my father. Eliza, his voice was strangely calm. I need some financial assistance. It's temporary. I'll pay it back soon. James and I were listening on speakerphone again. He had already contacted a lawyer and started preparing a restraining order. How much do you need? I asked. $5,000, he said without hesitation. As family, as a daughter, helping out that much is only natural, right? I looked at James. He just shook his head. Dad, do you understand how dangerous the gamble you're taking is? I asked quietly. James took everything from me. He suddenly shouted. My position, my dignity, even my daughter. He should be punished. Your problem has always been that you're self-centered, I said. I am not a thing, not a possession to be taken. I made my own choices. Did you know he was the CEO? My father said in a trembling voice. Did you marry him knowing he was my boss? I married him knowing who he is, I answered. Because he is kind, honest, and respects me. Things you never showed me. The phone went silent and was then disconnected. The next morning, the news was shocking. My father had been arrested for compliance violations and attempted sale of corporate secrets. According to a report from the company's security, my mother and Camila were crying at home. What should I have done? I asked James. I could have stopped them. James touched my cheek and said gently, Eliza, these were their choices, not your responsibility. That afternoon, I formally applied for a restraining order through my lawyer against my parents, Benjamin and Camila. I couldn't let those who were destroying their own lives to destroy mine as well. You forgot my existence, I wrote in my final email. Now it's my turn to forget yours. From that day, I created a new phone number, a new email address, and a new beginning. James supported me throughout the process, and at night he held me in his arms and whispered, "You're not alone. I am your family." 6 months later, we bought a new house. A beautiful house by the lake, away from the city's hustle and bustle. James successfully reorganized the company, and I was promoted to chief legal officer. The only traces of my former family were the occasional documents from the court. The demands for gifts from Adrian and Sophia were gone, and I was free. The family bonds were broken, but James and I were building a new family. A family where I was visible. Every night after dinner, James and I would drink wine and talk about future plans, and once a month we would have dinner with James' parents and dream about our own family. And sometimes his casual words gave me a sense of security I had never experienced before. "You are my everything, Eliza." My name is Catherine Thompson, born just 3 minutes after my twin sister, Jennifer. Those few moments marked a significant boundary in our lives. While it was just a 3-minute difference, it immensely shaped our separate paths. Our parents, Richard and Dorothy, ran a real estate business in a quiet suburban neighborhood. My mother was always dressed in designer clothes. Her appearance was perfected with makeup, as she headed out to showcase luxurious apartments. My father was deeply engrossed in managing the company, immersed in a world of numbers. On the surface, our family projected a facade of harmony. Yet beneath this exterior, there lurked a subtle but pervasive distortion that I became acutely aware of by the tender age of 5. We were born as fraternal twins. As a result, just like siblings in other families with an age difference, our facial features and appearances were distinct from each other. Jennifer had a radiant and beautiful face with slightly curly hair, appearing almost angelic when present. In contrast, I was quite average, plain-faced and easily overlooked, certainly not the angelic type. Unlike other parents who might dress their twins in identical outfits, ours chose distinctly different paths for us. Jennifer was adorned in the latest designer wear while I received hand-me-downs or clearance items. She played with genuine Barbie dolls, whereas I had imitation toys from the dollar store. Even our birthday cakes were divided unequally, with Jennifer always getting the larger share on top of receiving more gifts. At the age of 6, Jennifer started ballet lessons. When I asked them if I could take it too, I was told that enrolling both of us was not feasible. Strangely enough, Jennifer's extracurricular activities continued to expand gymnastics, piano, painting classes. It was evident in our family photos. Jennifer was always at the center, dressed in fancy clothes from upscale children's boutiques, while I blended into the background in generic, mass-produced attire. It felt as though I was an outsider in my own family photos. Each night, as I lay in bed gazing at the ceiling, I would ponder. Perhaps my parents simply do not see me. I managed to endure the disparities in material possessions as a child, understanding that one doesn't require luxurious clothing or toys to live. However, the real pain stemmed from the palpable difference in our parents' affection. Whenever Jennifer spoke, our parents would lean in, hanging on her every word. In contrast, whenever I spoke, their gazes would never settle on me. They would give non-committal responses, making it unclear whether they were even listening, and would quickly shift the conversation back to Jennifer. Entering elementary school brought a faint glimmer of hope. Dressed in identical school uniforms, navy blazers, checkered skirts, and pristine white blouses, I harbored a slight hope of being seen as an equal. Smile, our mother would instruct us during photo sessions, her camera lens invariably focused on Jennifer. "Jennifer, turn your head a bit to the right." Yes, perfect. My familiar heartache returned. Even in the same uniform, it was clear whom my mother was determined to showcase. Our school environment was a clean, well-ordered space with alphabet charts on the walls and neatly arranged desks. We were twins in the same class, and our teacher, Mizu Johnson, seated us in alphabetical order. Sitting next to each other, we were arranged as Thompson, Thompson. For once it seemed as though we were treated equally by someone outside our home. However, this semblance of parity was short-lived. dissipating the moment we stepped outside the classroom. The same scene played out every day. My mother's black SUV would pull up, and without a glance in my direction, she'd instruct me, "Catherine, go straight home and do your homework," while turning to Jennifer with a bright smile. "Let's go to your ballet lesson, Jennifer." The week was filled with Jennifer's lessons: ballet on Monday, piano on Tuesday, art on Wednesday, gymnastics on Thursday, and drama on Friday. I would watch them leave and then head into the silent house alone. I threw myself into my studies, hoping that perfect grades might make my parents notice me. I worked on math problems, practiced the alphabets, and read ahead in textbooks at the kitchen table for hours. After a long silence, I would hear the garage door and their cheerful voices echoing in the hallway. Holding on to a faint hope that my mother might turn her attention to me, I studied alone in the empty house every day. "Mom, I got a perfect score on my test," I announced one day, holding up my answer sheet. "That's nice, Catherine," she replied indifferently, organizing Jennifer's ballet bag. "Jennifer, show your father your new dance." But I didn't give up. I collected my perfect scores, accolades from teachers, and numerous gold star stickers like precious treasures, each harboring a silent prayer that they might one day suffice to draw my parents' gaze. Then, one pivotal night, everything was irrevocably altered. It was just after I turned 12. Having finished my homework, I was on my way to get some water when I overheard my parents' voices coming from the study. Normally, I would ignore their conversations, but this time I found myself stopping in my tracks. Sometimes I wonder my father's voice carried an unusual weight. "Maybe it was too much for us," he said. "What do you mean?" my mother asked. "Having twins. Jennifer alone would have been enough. She's the perfect daughter we always wanted. But two." I understand my mother's side. Jennifer is special. She has a wonderful future ahead of her. But Catherine, she's just there. It would have been better if it had just been Jennifer. I almost dropped the glass I was holding. I hastily grabbed it again, but in its place, it felt as though my heart shattered like an illusionary echo. At that moment, everything became clear. All the years I spent trying to earn my parents' love, holding on to the hope that maybe things would change, all of it seemed foolish. They never wanted me. From the beginning, I was the unnecessary twin, the daughter who should not have been born. That night marked a change within me. I stopped seeking my parents' approval and instead focused on my academics, setting my sights on independence from my family, freed from the burden of trying to please them. My mind opened up in unexpected ways. My already good grades improved significantly as I moved on to middle school. "Excellent analysis," Catherine Mizu Anderson praised me during English class as she held up my essay. "This is the depth of thought I am looking for, everyone." I could feel Jennifer's pencil hitting the desk harder as she sat next to me, her face turning red with frustration. This scenario was repeated in other subjects: math, science, social studies. The more the teachers praised my work, the more intense Jennifer's reactions became. One evening, I inadvertently overheard Jennifer's grievances echoing from the living room below. "Mom, the teachers are being mean. They always praise Catherine and make me look bad. They're doing it on purpose." The next day, my mother, her designer brand handbag swinging, stormed into the school with the click of her heels echoing down the hallway. "Why are the teachers discriminating against Jennifer?" she demanded in the principal's office. Mr. Harrison, our homeroom teacher, maintained a calm and professional demeanor. "Mrs. Thompson, this isn't a case of discrimination. Please take a look at their academic records." He carefully displayed our grades for her inspection. Catherine consistently achieves top marks across all her subjects. As for Jennifer, "Are you saying my Jennifer is stupid?" my mother interrupted. "No at all. But Catherine's academic performance is. This is exactly the discrimination I'm talking about. You clearly have a bias against Jennifer. No amount of evidence could convince her otherwise." That day, I heard my mother telling my father, "The teachers are discriminating against our precious Jennifer." Days turned into years, and high school graduation day arrived. When my name was called as the valedictorian, my parents barely clapped. However, when Jennifer walked across the stage, they cheered as if she had won an Olympic gold medal. And then the day everything changed arrived the day after graduation. "I have some exciting news," my mother announced at breakfast, barely able to keep still in her chair. "We're going on a trip to Hawaii to celebrate your graduation." For a moment, my heart leapt, thinking that maybe, just maybe, this would be different. "Look," my mother turned to me with a dismissive tone, "we could only get 3 tickets. You understand, right? It's necessary for someone to stay behind to look after the house." She then tossed a thick envelope in front of me. "Also, take a look at this." As I opened it, inside were numerous unpaid bills and detailed statements of debt. The total amount was staggering. "Sort this out while we're gone," my father stated bluntly. "You're smart, right? You should be able to handle it." Jennifer, stirring her orange juice, smirked smugly. "Don't worry, Catherine. I'll send you lots of pictures from the beach." The next morning, I stood at the front door, watching them load their expensive suitcases into the taxi. Jennifer turned back with an exaggerated wave. "I'll send you some lovely photos from Hawaii," they said as they left me behind with a mountain of debt. As the taxi turned the corner and disappeared, I felt my body shake with anger and disappointment. At that moment, I remembered something a shout from a phone call my mother had years ago. "I don't want anything to do with it anymore. That cheap house and those tacky clothes. It's just embarrassing. I've moved up in social status." She had screamed, talking to her own parents, my grandparents, whom she referred to as low class and had cut off ties with, the grandparents I had never met. I immediately sneaked into my mother's study and found her address book. At the very back, I found what seemed to be my grandparents' names alongside an address in an old town. That evening, I visited my grandparents' home, a modest house with a well-maintained garden. My heart pounded as I rang the doorbell. The door opened and an elderly couple appeared. My grandmother had her gray hair neatly tied back, and my grandfather wore thin-framed glasses. "Who might you be?" They looked puzzled, but their expressions changed as I began to speak. "My name is Catherine Thompson. I believe you are my grandparents." My grandmother covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh, you are Dorothy's." Their warm gazes suddenly made me well up with tears. They invited me inside their home. I sat in their cozy living room, sipping the coffee they offered. They seemed unable to take their eyes off me. "You look just like your mother when she was young," my grandmother said softly, her tone imbued with nostalgia. For the first time, I experienced a sense of genuine recognition. I was recognized for who I was, not evaluated or compared. As I held back tears for years, they finally started to overflow. They left me behind. I began to sob as I told them about the years of differential treatment by my parents, the Hawaii trip, and the statement of debts. By the time I finished, my grandfather's expression had changed. Actually, he began in a firm yet gentle tone, "That house belongs to us. Your parents are merely tenants." He revealed that he had worked in real estate over 20 years ago, handling many prime properties as a senior executive during prosperous times. However, as the economy declined, the company went bankrupt. Just before that, he had the opportunity to buy that house, which was a liquidated property of the company, at a very low price. At that time, the neighborhood was underdeveloped and the property values were minimal. My grandfather continued. "I saw the potential in real estate and invested almost all of our savings to buy it." "But my mother," I asked, puzzled. "Dorothy said it was her house," my grandmother interjected. "After the company went bankrupt, we lived a modest life. It was really tough at times. Dorothy was ashamed of our life. When she was young, we were quite well off. She couldn't bear the downgraded lifestyle. She said she would succeed in business with Richard, and not end up like me." My grandfather's voice was tinged with deep sadness. My grandmother explained that when my mother got married, my grandparents offered to provide a house for my parents with the agreement that they would pay rent. However, as my parents' business began to take off, My mother started telling people that they had bought the house themselves. We turned a blind eye, my grandfather continued. We knew Dorothy was embarrassed to admit receiving help from us, but it was understood that they would continue to make rent payments. However, rent payments began to fall behind about 5 years ago. The last call from Dorothy was 3 years ago. My grandmother's voice quivered slightly. She said, "We are managing the house for you. You should be grateful for that alone." And she claimed, "The property value has more than doubled. We are managing it, so stop demanding rent like it's something prestigious." My grandfather continued with a bitter expression. After saying that, she hung up the phone and completely cut off contact with us. Since then, my father's real estate company had taken on a significant amount of debt from risky property investments and was suffering from serious business downturns. Behind their glamorous lifestyle, the debts were snowballing. Dorothy cut off ties with us and was ashamed to speak of us as poor parents. My grandmother's voice was filled with sorrow. But in reality, they were the ones who couldn't even pay the monthly rent. My eyes widened in shock. When Dorothy last called, we didn't sell the house because we thought maybe one day she would understand, my grandfather said with a stern expression. But we can't overlook this any longer. Meanwhile, my grandparents had been living modestly while investing in several IT companies, and those investments had paid off handsomely. Your mother left saying we were too poor, my grandfather said, shaking his head. Ironically, we are now wealthier than ever. We just don't feel the need to show it off. Then, my grandmother pulled out a bundle of aged documents. This is the deed to the house. We have kept all the records of unpaid rent. We have the right to dispose of the items in the house to pay off the debt. It's time to end your parents' lavish lifestyle. At that moment, my cell phone vibrated. It was a photo message from Jennifer, posing on a Hawaiian beach with the caption, "Wish you were here, LOL." I looked at the message, then at my grandparents' faces, and then at the stack of documents in front of me. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the lesser twin. Over the next 2 weeks, I slowly arranged for real estate agents and buyers. My parents' cherished luxury furniture, my mother's branded collections, my father's expensive car, all were put up for sale. Each day, my phone vibrated with new notifications of Jennifer posing on different beaches, dining at upscale restaurants, and relaxing in infinity pools, each picture accompanied by increasingly arrogant captions. Living the best life. This is what success looks like. Winners spend their time in Hawaii, others only dream about it. As I continued with the task at hand, the house gradually emptied, feeling like a weight was being lifted from my heart. Then, the day they were due to return arrived. I pretended to read a book in the living room, peeking through the window. I watched as the taxi arrived and their reactions unfolded one by one. My mother was the first to enter the now bare house, stopping so abruptly that Jennifer, following close behind, bumped into her. My father, struggling with a set of expensive suitcases, nearly tripped over them. "What have you done?" my mother said in a hollow voice, her hands trembling as she clutched her designer bag. "What did you do?" My father blamed me, his face reddened from the Hawaiian sun and shock. Jennifer burst out laughing, though her laugh was tinged with uncertainty. "You're joking, right? Everything's gone." "It's to pay off the debts," I replied calmly. "Oh, and take a look at this," I said, handing over the documents my grandparents had entrusted to me. "From Grandpa and Grandma. I heard they actually own this house, and they want you to leave," I informed them. My mother's tanned face went pale. "What?" "Yes, your parents. The two poor and embarrassing ones," I continued as I handed over the legal papers. "You have 30 days to vacate this house. Of course, I'm leaving too. I'm going to live with them." Jennifer started crying. "But what about my room? My clothes? Most of it's already sold to pay the debts." The photos from Hawaii were nice, weren't they? My father turned to my mother. "Dorothy, call your parents right now," he commanded with the same tone he used when ordering in a restaurant. My mother's hands trembled as she took out her cell phone, her French nails sparkling in the sunlight. When my grandmother answered the phone, my mother didn't even bother to greet her but switched to speakerphone and shouted, "What is this about?" Her voice echoed. Over the phone, my grandmother's voice was calm and slightly amused. "Oh, it's been a while. Did you enjoy your fancy vacation? I saw the lovely pictures your daughter posted. The Royal Hawaiian Hotel is fabulous this time of year, isn't it? Don't change the subject. Why do we have to leave the house?" my mother demanded. Well, my grandmother's voice was satisfied. "Your two poor and embarrassing parents are actually quite wealthy now." My mother's tone suddenly changed, becoming as sweet as honey. "Mom, I've been thinking. Let's put the past behind us and start over. Family is important, after all." Indeed, my grandmother's voice was cold. By the way, my mother's eyes shifted towards Jennifer, who already seemed to be calculating something. "Did you forget Jennifer, your other grandchild? If Jennifer loses the house and ends up homeless." My grandfather's laughter then echoed over the phone. "Are you talking about the granddaughter you took to Hawaii? The one who left Catherine behind?" My mother's face turned red. "It's not like that. Look, grandparents should treat their grandchildren equally. They are the same age, after all." Equally, my grandmother's voice sharpened. "I don't think you're one to talk. Shouldn't parents love their children equally?" "But it seems that wasn't the case in your household," she pointed out before my mother could respond anything, and the call ended. The weeks that followed were filled with turmoil. My parents tried desperately to reconcile with my grandparents, but it was too late. They were forced to move into a cheap apartment, and Jennifer struggled to accept that her luxurious lifestyle had crumbled instantly. Meanwhile, I started a new life at my grandparents' house. They fully supported my college education. Each morning, I woke up to the smell of my grandmother's warm coffee and chatted with my grandfather over the newspaper. I never knew such ordinary happiness could be so precious. As my new life at university began, I chose to study law. I want to specialize in family law in the future, protecting the rights of children who grow up in complex family environments. One evening, after returning from university, my grandmother told me, "Your parents came today." My heart skipped a beat. What did they say? Oh, the usual. Your mother came with a fake smile, offered a hollow apology, tried to probe our financial situation, and hinted about Jennifer's upcoming birthday. Your father was looking around the house, probably trying to estimate our assets. How did you respond? My grandfather joined in. I told them that we've already decided on how our assets would be used. It's all going to you, he stated. I could imagine my mother's forced smile crumbling. What was their reaction? Well, my grandmother laughed. Dorothy's smile definitely fell apart. I told them not to come back again. That night, I blocked my parents' and Jennifer's phone numbers and all their social media accounts. I knew that messages of regret and offers to make amends would come, but I no longer needed such a family. I don't harbor any hatred towards them. Rather, I quietly accept that there comes a time when everyone must face the consequences of their choices. Living with my grandparents, I learned what unconditional love is for the first time. The happiness of being recognized for who I am without comparison. Sometimes, the most unexpected events can lead to the most beautiful outcomes. Now, as I take notes in constitutional law class, I occasionally think about the little girl who once prayed for her parents' love. I want to tell her that something better is waiting. Not just love, but respect, support, and the freedom to be oneself. The love from my grandparents has given me the chance to turn a new page in my life. While the past with my parents did come with pain, it has now strengthened me and become a part of who I am. In Manhattan, there is a luxury hotel named the Royal Grace. Located on its top floor, Le Verre is a restaurant that offers a spectacular view of the city at night. The high ceilings, softly glowing chandeliers, and the quiet sound of jazz piano all contribute to an extraordinary dining experience. Everything is of the highest quality, creating an escape from the everyday. With my heart pounding, I stepped into the elevator. Today is going to be a wonderful birthday. I truly believed that. My name is Alyssa. Today is my 29th birthday. I rushed here, adjusting my work schedule to make it to dinner with my mother and sister. I looked forward to spending my birthday with my loved ones with warm meals, smiling conversations, and caring moments. This was supposed to be the happiest occasion for me. However, as soon as I opened the restaurant door, the expectations filling my heart shattered with a crash. At a table in front of me, my mother, Hillary, and my sister, Brittany, were enjoying their dessert. What? I stopped in my tracks. The table, covered with a white cloth, had used plates and wine glasses, indicating they had finished their meal. They were smiling and sipping espresso. Why, I asked as I slowly approached the table. Mom? Brittany. When I called out, they finally seemed to notice me. Oh, Alyssa, you finally made it. My mother placed her cup down gracefully. Her expression showed neither surprise nor awkwardness. It seemed completely natural. What do you mean? My voice was hoarse. We had a dinner plan, didn't we? Yes, we did. But I thought you were busy. So we started without you. I felt a tightness in my chest. You're kidding, right? It's not a joke. My mother spoke bluntly. You seemed so busy with work. We didn't want to burden you, so we enjoyed ourselves. But I told you I was coming. Yes. But we weren't sure if you could really make it, and we didn't want to waste the reservation at this nice restaurant. I was at a loss for words. You could have waited. At that, Brittany snorted. There was no need for us to wait. You didn't make it on time anyway. I was just a little late? Okay, sorry. Since you're here, why not enjoy some dessert at least? Brittany spoke lightly while moving her dessert fork. I tried to sit down, but at that moment, Brittany swiftly extended her hand with the bill. Here you go, Alyssa. What? A gift for you. It's your turn to pay. I was stunned. You're joking, right? I'm serious. Brittany laughed heartily. You're successful in your job, right? You can afford this. I was shocked. Wait a minute. Weren't you supposed to be celebrating my birthday? Why should I pay? Well, you're the one with the most money. It's not about the money. My voice grew louder. However, my mother just smiled elegantly, saying nothing. You're busy, and it's hard to make time for family, isn't it? She spoke quietly. Then at least, shouldn't you entertain us on occasions like this? I was dumbfounded. I had worked so hard for my family, and yet why did it come to this? Ever since I was young, I had excelled in my studies, graduated from high school with top grades, and even had my university fees waived, never burdening my parents. After university, I joined a prestigious company, prioritized work over time with my family, climbed the ranks, and continued to earn money. I even helped pay for Brittany's university fees, thinking I was doing everything for my family. Yet, to be treated this way by my own family, it seemed they never considered my feelings at all. I can't, I muttered softly. What? Brittany tilted her head. Enough, I can't do this anymore. At that moment, I stood up. Having a meal without me and then expecting me to pay. That's not a birthday gift, it's just an insult. My mother frowned. There's no need to say it like that. This day is important to me. Yet neither of you considered my feelings at all. Brittany sighed. Fine. If you're going to be this upset, I'll have Mom pay this time. It's not even about that. I grabbed my bag and turned on my heel. Where are you going? My mother called out to me. Home. There's no point in staying here anymore. Wait a minute. Brittany raised her voice in panic. Are you really that mad? It was just a little joke. This isn't even close to a joke. With those words, I left the restaurant. The cold night air blew through me. Shivering, I pulled out my smartphone and sent a message to my fiancé, Daniel. Can we meet sooner? I need to see you now. I was desperately holding back tears. I hurried through the bustling New York night, enveloped by the cold wind. Despite the glamorous city lights and the smiles of people passing by, my heart remained frozen. My phone vibrated with a reply from Daniel. "I'm here for you. Where are you?" The moment I saw his brief message, the tears I had been holding back overflowed. "I just left the Royal Grace. I need to see you now." My fingers trembled as I desperately typed my reply. Red notifications appeared immediately, and the next moment, Daniel called. "Alyssa." Hearing his gentle voice, I could no longer hold back my tears. "Daniel, what happened? Please. I need to see you right now. I'm on my way in the car. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Daniel's words finally allowed me to breathe a little easier. He would understand my feelings. That alone made me feel like I could stand. As I walked to our meeting place, my tears gradually dried. But the pain spreading through my heart did not fade. After a while, a black SUV quietly pulled up in front of me. The driver's window rolled down, revealing Daniel's handsome face. "Get in." I silently opened the passenger door and got in. As the door closed, Daniel gently took my hand. "Are you okay?" "No, I'm not." As soon as I spoke, tears fell again. Daniel didn't say anything, he just held my hand tighter. His warmth slowly seeped into me, calming me slightly. "Should we go home?" "No, let's go somewhere quiet." "Okay." Without asking anything further, Daniel drove off. He took me to a small, quiet cafe located away from the touristy areas. The cafe had a calm atmosphere with warm lighting. As we sat in a corner seat, Daniel took off his coat and looked at me. "What happened?" With his calm voice, I finally opened up. I was betrayed by my family. Betrayed. It was supposed to be a family dinner for my birthday. But when I got to the restaurant, they had already finished their meal. Mom and Brittany were just having dessert. Daniel listened quietly. When I asked why, they said, "We thought you were too busy, but when I arrived, they pushed the payment onto me." Brittany handed me the bill saying, "Here's your present. It's your turn to pay." As I spoke, my anger and sadness surged up again. "That's awful," Daniel said quietly. "I can't believe they would do that to you on your birthday. If they really cared about you, they wouldn't do such a thing." I bit my lip. Just because they're family, it doesn't mean they can do anything, right? Do we have to forgive everything just because we're related? I looked at Daniel. Just because they're family, it doesn't justify hurting someone else. They can't justify the pain you're going through. Daniel's words made me realize something. He was really listening to my feelings more than anyone else. "Thank you." "For what?" "For really listening to me." Daniel smiled gently. "Of course. Alyssa, you're the most important person to me." His words warmed my heart from within. While sipping a warm latte, I finally began to feel at ease. "I don't think I'd feel any better if we go home now. How about we stay somewhere else then?" Daniel suggested. "What?" "We could stay at a hotel, or you could come to my place. Let's go somewhere where you can forget all the unpleasantness of today." I hesitated for a moment, but I didn't want to be alone tonight. "Can we go to your place?" "Of course." He smiled gently and took my hand again. "Let's go." As we left the cafe, the cold night air brushed against my cheeks. However, Daniel's hand was warm, and I barely felt the chill. We got into his car and headed to his house. Tonight, I would rest my heart by his side. When we arrived at Daniel's house, the moment he opened the door, a comforting scent wafted through the air. A gentle woody aroma mixed with a hint of sweet vanilla seemed to have been prepared just to soothe the soul. "Come in, Alyssa." He took my coat and gently ushered me in. The living room was lit with soft indirect lighting, the large sofa and the flickering fireplace creating a warm ambience. "It's comforting here." "I'm glad to hear you say that," Daniel smiled. "Just wait here. I'll be right back." He disappeared into the back room. I sat down on the sofa and took a deep breath. The events of the day replayed in my mind, tightening my chest again. But being in Daniel's house, the pain seemed to slowly subside. A few minutes later, Daniel returned, carrying something in his hands. "What's this?" "A small whole cake on a plate with a single candle. Happy birthday, Alyssa." I instinctively covered my mouth with my hand. "Daniel, I wanted to properly celebrate your birthday. It turned out like this, but it's still an important day to me." He gently lit the candle and placed the cake in front of me. "Make a wish and blow out the candle." Feeling overwhelmed, I closed my eyes. May I truly smile from my heart on my next birthday. With that wish, I slowly blew out the candle. "Happy birthday, Alyssa," Daniel spoke softly, and I looked at him. "Thank you. I never expected something this wonderful." "I didn't want your day to end in sadness," he said as he cut the cake and offered me a slice. Taking a fork, I tasted it, and a perfect sweetness spread through my mouth. Delicious. I'm glad Daniel smiled with satisfaction. I wanted to make it myself, but there wasn't time. "Don't worry about that. Just preparing this for me means so much." I smiled and looked at him. Daniel shifted his gaze awkwardly as he quietly said, "Next year, let's celebrate at a restaurant you want to go to." His words warmed my heart again. "Yes. Will you be with me next year too?" Daniel gently held my hand and looked directly at me. "Of course. Not just this year, but always." His words nestled softly into my heart. The hurt from my family wasn't fully digested yet, but with Daniel by my side, I felt I could start looking forward again. "Thank you, Daniel. I'm the lucky one, having you in my life." As the fireplace quietly flickered, we savored the cake and spent a tranquil time together. My birthday finally turned into a special day in the end. The next day, I received a phone call from my mother and sister. My mother's voice was unusually soft, and Brittany spoke in her usual light tone. "Alyssa, about yesterday," my mother began. "We thought you wouldn't mind since you're busy." "It was just a joke," Brittany continued. "We gave you the bill as a half joke, thinking you could easily afford it. We didn't expect you to get so angry." Hearing those words, I felt a tightness in my chest. Is this really something that can be dismissed as a half joke? My feelings cannot be so easily set aside. But I've always felt. I began slowly, my voice trembling. Could they sense the pain in my heart through the phone? I've always felt alienated by our family. I didn't have time to contact you because I was busy, but I felt like you were ignoring me, and it always weighed on my heart. I said this, and then hung up the phone unilaterally. I was terribly shaken. Voicing it had brought out the pain I had been holding inside. Even though I knew it was the right thing to do, deep down, I still feared severing ties with my family. Soon after, my mother called back. However, I ignored the call. I didn't want to respond while my heart was still unsettled. Looking at my mother's name displayed on the smartphone screen, I coldly slid to ignore it. Messages from Brittany kept coming in. "Alyssa, please don't ignore me. Let's talk properly. We didn't mean any harm by what we said." Reading those messages, my chest tightened again, and I couldn't respond. My heart was torn between expectations and disappointments towards my family. However, the incident on my birthday made me think it was time to reassess my relationship with them. The self-centered attitudes of my mother and sister, their long-standing indifference, and now their insulting behavior had accumulated to the point where I could no longer let emotions cloud my judgment. Then one day I received a demand letter from a financial institution. When I opened the envelope labeled Notice of Arrears, I found a list of credit card transactions I didn't recognize. Upon investigating, it turned out that a loan had been taken out without my consent. This can't be true. I immediately contacted the credit card company to confirm the details of the contract, and there I found my mother and sister's names. They had been using my name to cover expensive purchases and travel expenses. It's okay because we're family, right? When confronted, Brittany nonchalantly laughed it off. My mother also brazenly said, "You earn enough, so you should be able to help us out a bit, shouldn't you?" At that moment, something inside me broke. This was not just betrayal. It was a crime. That night, I decided to consult with Daniel. He is usually gentle and calm, but he never compromises with injustice or irrationality. I felt that he would understand my feelings now and make a sound judgment. When I called, Daniel answered immediately. "What's wrong?" Hearing his voice, the tension in my chest eased. But this was no time for sentimentality. I took a deep breath and explained the situation. "So, your mother and sister used your name to take out credit cards and loans without your permission?" "Yes." And when I confronted them, they just casually said, "It's okay, because we're family, I can't forgive them." Daniel was silent for a moment. Then he said quietly in a low voice, "What do you want to do?" After thinking it over, I answered clearly, "I want to sue them. Just because they're family, that doesn't mean they can do something like this. They've been indifferent for so long, trampling on my feelings. But I can't tolerate it anymore." Daniel sighed softly, then said, "That's fine. If you've decided that, I'll support you fully. First, I'll introduce you to a lawyer. I know someone who is good with fraud cases." "Really?" "Yes. Unauthorized use of your name is a clear crime. If we act quickly, we can minimize the damage and the legal process will go smoothly." Daniel's words gave me a sense of security. I had been hesitant to discuss family problems with anyone, but he was different. He respected my will and offered practical solutions. "Thank you, Daniel. Really. No need for thanks. You're important to me. Let's go to the lawyer's office together tomorrow. If we're going to fight, we need to be well prepared." Listening to his reassuring voice, I felt my resolve strengthen. The next day, I visited the lawyer's office with Daniel to formally discuss the unauthorized use of my name and to prepare for legal action. The lawyer calmly organized the situation and explained that it was highly likely to qualify as a case of fraud. This can be treated as a criminal case, and you can also claim damages in a civil suit. Which direction would you like to proceed in? I answered without hesitation. "Both, please." I was no longer willing to cry for the sake of my family. The suffering and sadness I had endured until now would fuel me to protect my life going forward. A few days later, a legal notice was sent to my family through the lawyer. The first to be shaken was my father. Having overlooked my mother and sister's whims until now, he probably felt that this time he could not ignore the situation. "I want to talk as a family." At my father's request, I arranged a meeting with my family with a lawyer and Daniel also present. At the agreed time, we gathered in a hotel lounge. The lawyer, Daniel, and my mother, sister, and father were all seated there. My mother and sister had their usual dissatisfied expressions, but my father looked somewhat weary. Was it really necessary to make such a big deal out of this? That was the first thing my mother said. I laughed coldly. "If you think so, you shouldn't have used my name without permission in the first place. But we're family. So because we're family, you can do whatever you want? Even if it makes me miserable, I should just grin and bear it." Brittany retorted with a scowl, "You're exaggerating. You don't need to blame us so much. Are you that angry just because we used some money?" "Just some. Do you know how much money you spent? Have you ever thought about how hard I've worked to earn that money?" My mother and sister fell silent. They must have thought that money just falls from the sky. Then my father, who had been silent until then, took a deep breath and spoke. "I was wrong too." My mother and sister looked at him with surprise. "I've spoiled Hillary and Brittany too much. Alyssa was always seeking something from the family, and I also turned a blind eye. I'm truly sorry." I was taken aback by my father's words. It was the first time he was trying to understand my feelings. My mother and sister, perhaps finally realizing something, looked down. Ever since I was little, no matter how hard I studied, nobody praised me. Even when I had good grades at school, Mom only cared about Brittany, and I always felt left out. Dad was too busy with work and seemed too tired to pay attention to me. No matter how hard I tried, I felt that nobody saw me. And I was very lonely. Even when I talked about my achievements, the responses were mostly indifferent or dismissively brief. Gradually, I felt like my existence was fading. My voice trembled. I wish you had noticed sooner. My mother had tears in her eyes. Brittany remained bowed and motionless. It's too late now. After this, I intend to distance myself from you all. My mother looked up. But we're family. Family or not, you trampled over my life, didn't you? My mother was left speechless. I will no longer be manipulated by you. I'll marry Daniel and start a new life. Daniel squeezed my hand. Whatever decision you make, I'm here for you. I smiled. Then the lawyer concluded. The legal proceedings have already begun. From now on, the matter will be decided in court. My mother and sister hung their heads, unable to say anything. Only my father nodded slightly. I'm truly sorry. I said nothing and stood up. As the trial progressed, the unauthorized use of my name by my mother and sister was formally acknowledged. In the courtroom where the verdict was delivered, I quietly listened to the judgment. The defendants are found to have used the plaintiff's name without authorization, incurring substantial debt. Therefore, the defendants are ordered to repay the full amount of the unauthorized use and pay damages to the plaintiff. My mother and sister listened to the judge's words in a daze. At the moment the verdict was given, Brittany murmured softly, "This can't be." My mother slumped her shoulders, and my father sighed deeply. "It's a deserved outcome." I stated that calmly and turned to look at my fiancé, Daniel, who had been watching from the gallery. He gently squeezed my hand and smiled kindly. After the judgment, my mother and sister faced substantial debts for the repayment of the unauthorized use of my name and damages that resulted from it. We don't have enough money. I never thought it would come to this. Brittany lamented, and my mother began to regret the easiness of their past lives. My father looked at them sternly. You've both done whatever you wanted for too long. Have you only just realized how much Alyssa has suffered? My mother and sister had nothing to say. A few weeks later, my father reached out through a message. We were wrong. I've only now come to understand how terribly we treated you. Can we start over as a family? While repaying their debts, it seems my mother and sister began to reflect on their actions and started making efforts to mend our relationship. Brittany took on multiple part-time jobs, and my mother also began to reform her lifestyle. I pondered their words in silence for a while before slowly responding. I can't do that immediately. On the other end of the phone, I sensed my mother and sister holding their breath. The birthday incident, the fraud this time. It's not just those. I have always been hurt by our family's indifference and selfishness. But I couldn't say anything. Even when I did, it didn't reach you. I closed my eyes and continued quietly. So, I can't just return to being a family right away. I need some distance. I could hear my mother sobbing. Brittany seemed about to say something but ultimately remained silent. Afterwards, I decided to cut off contact with my family and began preparing to start anew with Daniel. That night, I called Daniel. After hesitating for a moment, I heard his voice through the phone. Alyssa? What's wrong? I took a deep breath before continuing. I've decided to distance myself from my family. Daniel listened quietly. I see. Yes. I closed my eyes and organized my thoughts. I've decided to cut off contact with my family and start our new life. I thought I couldn't be trapped by the past any longer. Alyssa. I respect your decision, Daniel said kindly. But I'm really proud of you for how you've handled this and for trying to move past it. Thank you, Daniel. My voice trembled slightly. Being with you, I feel like I'm gradually moving forward. But now I really want to start a new life just with the two of us, in a new place. Daniel was silent for a while but eventually spoke in a calm voice. "Let's do that, Alyssa. Your happiness is what matters most to me." His words warmed my heart. I felt that together we could walk a new path in life. "Thank you, Daniel. Will you stay with me?" Of course, his voice was steady. "I'll be with you no matter what." Hearing this, I finally felt reassured. Thus I began walking toward a happy future in a new town with Daniel. Even after starting our new life, contacts from my family continued unabated. At first, I managed to ignore them. However, my mind often wrestled with thoughts of my family, bringing up complex feelings. One day, I opened a message from my mother that read, "Alyssa, I truly wish you are well. If you can open your heart even a little, I would like to start over as a family. I sincerely wish for your happiness." Reading that message, I felt a hole in my heart begin to close slightly. Their words didn't fully heal my feelings, but at least they showed a concern that hadn't been there before. Contacts from Brittany and father also began to come in, and each time I struggled with whether to respond, gradually sorting out my feelings. I might have continued ignoring them for a while, but somewhere in my heart, a desire to reconcile with my family began to grow. Then, one day, while spending a quiet night with Daniel, I suddenly felt unwell. The next day, a visit to the hospital revealed I was pregnant. A mixture of surprise, anxiety, and anticipation swirled within me. At that moment, I decided, for our new life, I would gradually mend my relationship with my family. When I shared this with Daniel, he said with a gentle smile, "Alyssa, if that's what you think, I'll support you too. If you want to bridge the distance with your family, I'm here to help." Hearing this, I felt a bit relieved. The responsibility of becoming a parent and new hope enveloped me, strengthening my resolve to improve relations with my family and create a warm home for our child. A few weeks later, I reached out to my family and decided to slowly repair our relationship. It started with awkward conversations, but gradually we managed to share our feelings, and I had the opportunity to speak directly with my mother. "Alyssa, I'm really happy you've come back. From now on, I'll cherish your feelings." Her words filled my heart. The bond with my family had been damaged, but it feels like now is the time to mend it. For the new life Daniel and I are welcoming, I want all of us to stay connected and support each other as a family. On a chilly autumn evening, I sat by the window, gazing at the fallen maple leaves in the garden. The maple leaves danced in the wind, and the children passing by seemed eagerly awaiting Thanksgiving Day tomorrow. My name is Madison Brown, and I am 23 years old. For the past 5 years, I have lived with my father, my stepmother Kathy, and my stepbrother Chris. My biological mother passed away when I was 16, in the spring. Amidst fluttering petals, she succumbed after a long illness. In her final moments, she clasped my hand and whispered with a raspy voice, "Be happy." Those words have guided me ever since. My memories with my mother remain vivid in my mind even now. We used to bake chiffon cake together for Sunday snacks. Wrapped in the sweet aroma wafting from the oven, we would talk passionately as we waited for the cake to bake. I remember her gentle gaze when she helped me with my homework, encouraging me with, "It's okay to make mistakes," and the way the Christmas lights brightened her smile as we decorated together. More than anything, her warm presence, always there to listen when I needed it, remains vivid in my memory. After my mother's death, the atmosphere at home changed drastically. My father, devastated, would spend long hours in front of her portrait, and eventually, he buried himself in work as if to distract himself from the pain. Unable to cope with my loss, I immersed myself in my studies. As a result, our interactions dwindled, and a profound silence enveloped our home. About a year later, when I was 17, my father abruptly announced his remarriage to Kathy. I was taken aback, unable to comprehend how he could welcome someone new so soon after losing my mother. Kathy, a colleague from my father's company who knew my mother well, stirred complex feelings within me. The uncertainty and confusion about how this marriage would change our home weighed heavily on me. Yet, I tried to wish for my father's happiness, despite the lingering unease in my heart. Everything moved swiftly with Kathy. My father met her at a company social event and decided to marry her within 3 months. Before I knew it, Kathy and her son Chris, a brilliant student 2 years older than me attending a prestigious vocational school, were living with us. Initially, things seemed to go well. Kathy played the perfect housewife, preparing elaborate meals, keeping the house immaculate, and impressing at neighborhood gatherings as the exemplary wife. The dinner table was always vibrant with delicious dishes, and she would smile gently whenever I enjoyed my favorite foods. Chris played the role of a considerate stepbrother, helping me with my studies and offering career advice. "You can always count on me," he'd say, slowly earning my trust. My father was content, and a calm atmosphere prevailed at home. However, beneath the surface of our seemingly tranquil days, I felt something was amiss. There was a subtle discomfort behind Kathy's smile and a slight coldness in her gestures towards me compared to her warmth towards my father. Chris's kindness, while apparently sincere, seemed to scrutinize my reactions, adding to my unease. And in my father's absence, an indescribable stillness filled the air. The subtle coldness in Kathy's voice when she spoke to me, and the discomfort of Chris silently using his phone on the sofa made me feel stifled, despite the outward calm. Despite these feelings, I tried to ignore them, telling myself this was our new family dynamic. When Kathy suggested moving my mother's photos to a less conspicuous place in the house, I couldn't accept it. "Let's move them somewhere less visible," she said, but I firmly refused. "No, these are precious memories of my mother, and I want to keep them here," I insisted. "But going forward," she began, only for me to cut her off sharply. "Don't take away my memories of my mother. Without these, I feel like I'd have nothing left." Eventually, she agreed to leave the photos in my room. Looking at the pictures of my mother smiling at me felt like she was saying, "It's all right." At night, when I couldn't sleep, I'd talk to her photo in my mind. "Am I doing okay?" I'd ask, and although no answer came, somehow it soothed my heart. Preparations for Thanksgiving Day went on as usual. Kathy was busy from morning with the turkey and meat pies, while Chris went out to watch a soccer game with friends. My father was tied up with work calls in his study, and I quietly spent the day looking through my mother's keepsake album. The Thanksgiving dinner unfolded under Kathy's perfect direction. The table was laden with a golden-baked turkey, homemade meat pies, and various pumpkin dishes, looking like something out of a culinary magazine. "This year's turkey is special," Kathy declared proudly, having prepped it for 24 hours. My father smiled warmly. "It's a wonderful meal," he praised. Kathy smiled happily, saying, "I'm glad everyone enjoyed it." Chris chimed in, "Mom's cooking is the best." I felt out of place, as if I was the only one sensing something off in this seemingly ideal family dinner. A feeling that something was being hidden stirred unease within me. After the meal, as everyone retreated to their rooms, I felt a thirst and noted it was past midnight. Just as I started down the stairs, I overheard Kathy and Chris's voices from the living room. They spoke in hushed tones filled with urgency, different from their usual demeanor, probably thinking I was asleep. A chill ran down my spine, and I instinctively paused, holding my breath to listen. Approaching the living room, their voices became clearer. "We need to drive her out of this house before the will is finalized." Kathy's voice sliced through the silent night air. I gasped at her icy words. "As long as she's here, we can't proceed with our plans." Kathy's voice held no hesitation. My heart began to race uncontrollably. Something was terribly wrong. I trembled as I pulled out my smartphone, frantically activating the recording app. My heart pounded as I confirmed the recording had started. Exactly. At that moment I was shocked. The voice of Chris, who usually interacted with me as a gentle and calm brother, was tinged with a cruel tone. "We can't let her inherit equally." Dad's assets are vast, but sharing them is out of the question. She seems to have started job hunting. Kathy continued, her voice cunning as if plotting. Let's make sure she can't use the car for interviews. We could hide the keys or break down that old car for some reason. I can sabotage her computer too, Chris suggested. If she can't access job sites, her options will dwindle. She might give up and leave on her own if we push her enough. But we should avoid being too obvious, Kathy calculated. Moving too fast might make her suspicious. We need to corner her gradually, making her feel like she has no place here until she decides to leave on her own. Indeed, we should avoid noticeable actions. It would be bad if the neighbors start noticing. Chris agreed quietly. Let's spread rumors among her friends and acquaintances. Say she's a quitter who can't hold a job, or a troublemaker who causes conflicts. If we undermine her credibility, she'll lose her place in no time. I sensed Kathy's smirk. That works. Even if she gets a job, we can spread a little misunderstanding. If she feels isolated at work, she'll break down. Once she loses her pride, she'll give up on everything. As I listened to their conversation from the top of the stairs, a chilling sensation gripped me, and I struggled to contain my shivers. The pieces of my previous discomfort and minor incidents were then connected. Kathy had been spreading rumors about my job hunting. Chris had attempted to check my computer under pretense. It was all a calculated plan. Their conversation continued for over 30 minutes, discussing the details of my father's assets, various schemes to exclude me, and their future ambitions. Clutching the smartphone that recorded everything, I struggled to maintain my composure. My palms were sweaty, my heart felt like it might burst, but what could I do with this recording? I had no idea how to stop their plans. Then, my mother's words came to mind. Have the courage to do the right thing. Her encouragement, often repeated during my childhood challenges, seemed to comfort me now. In the cold room, her warm voice seemed the only thing supporting me. After finishing the recording, I clutched the smartphone tightly and returned to my room. I locked the door, finally allowing myself to breathe. I collapsed onto the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. Despite wanting to clear my mind, thoughts kept swirling relentlessly. For the past 5 years, I had tried desperately to build a relationship with my new family. When my father remarried, I had made every effort to be accepted by Kathy and her son Chris, my new family. But it was a futile effort from the start. Their cold looks and sharp words hidden in casual remarks still, I had believed that understanding would come with time and maintained a constant smile, which now seemed foolish. Looking out the window, the full moon peeked through the clouds. The white light seemed as if my mother was watching over me, gently illuminating my heart with its serene glow. "Mom," I whispered softly. "What I'm about to do, it's the right thing, isn't it?" The voice sounded like I was reassuring myself. Anxiety and conflict surged within me, but the memory of my mother's words kindled a faint courage in me. As I waited for dawn, I replayed the recording over and over. Each time, Kathy and Chris's voices pierced my heart with new thorns, like venomous bees attacking repeatedly, stirring anger and sadness within me. To have the courage to do the right thing, I pondered, could it be this painful? As the night began to fade, the first light of dawn cast a pale orange glow into the room, signaling a new beginning. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes to steady the shaking, and then opened them with resolve. "I'll just do what needs to be done," I muttered to myself, gripping my smartphone firmly. Although my heart still wavered, I knew there was no turning back. I called my father at exactly 7 a.m., just after he had left the house. I made the call from my room, making sure no one would notice. Despite being busy on his way to work, he sensed something in my tone and responded immediately. "Dad." My voice trembled, unable to hide my anxiety. "I need to meet with you outside, right away." "It's very important." After a brief silence, he replied. "Understood. Let's meet at our usual spot." The meeting place was a cafe called Roast Toast, a place our family often visited when my mother was alive. The nostalgic scent of coffee filled the cafe, and soft morning light streamed through the windows. That evening, after work, my father and I met there. He looked impeccable in his suit, though there were faint signs of fatigue under his eyes. Still, his manner of sipping black coffee, a gesture so familiar, hadn't changed. He always used to stop by this cafe during breaks in his busy work schedule to enjoy a moment of peace. My father set down his coffee and looked at me quietly. His eyes were the same as always, sharp yet warm. Then he simply asked, "So, what's this important matter?" I sat across from him, took a deep breath. "I want you to listen to this." I took out my smartphone. "It's something I recorded last night." As the recording played, my father's expression shifted from confusion to surprise, and then to a mix of deep sadness and anger. His gestures, occasionally furrowing his brows or pressing his lips tightly, conveyed the turmoil swirling within him. When the recording ended, a heavy silence hung in the air, the quiet music of the cafe feeling distant due to the tension. "Madison," my father finally spoke quietly, "you did well to record this. And thank you for telling me right away." His voice was low but carried a profound gravity. His eyes met mine directly, not just with gratitude but with a resolve to protect me. "Honestly, I feel like throwing them out right now," he continued, clenching his fist lightly. "But that would not be wise. Getting emotional would only give them an opportunity to exploit. We need to gather evidence first and thoroughly investigate their actions." My father believed me. His words slightly eased the tension that had been building up inside me. "Madison, you have done enough." He lifted his coffee cup with a tone that seemed to reassure himself. For a moment he looked down at his cup, then back at me. His eyes mixed a usual calm with a hint of regret and sorrow. "Madison," he continued quietly, exhaling, "I didn't realize how much you were suffering. I used work as an excuse and overlooked the changes in my own daughter." His voice sounded pained. I could tell my serious and responsible father was blaming himself. "I'm truly sorry," he said, setting down the coffee cup and looking directly into my eyes. "But now that I'm aware, leave it to me. I'll make sure to protect you, Madison." With those words, the tears I had been holding back finally spilled over. My father's regret, mixed with his love for me and his determination to protect me from now on, made me feel deeply reassured of his reliability. "Dad," I managed to call out with a trembling voice. "Thanks to you taking that brave step forward, we can start taking action. You're not alone anymore, so you can feel safe." My father's words gently wrapped around my solitary days, lighting a small beacon of hope in my heart. "It would be best if you moved to your grandmother's house starting today," my father said calmly as he began to lay out a specific plan. "Let's say it's to take care of your grandmother who's fallen ill. Actually, she has been worried about her age, and she'll definitely be happy having you live with her. Considering your safety, this is the best choice. I'll hire a private detective to thoroughly investigate their actions." "But Dad," I asked, worried, "do you have enough money? Hiring a detective is expensive, isn't it?" My father chuckled softly, leaning back in his chair. "Don't worry. This is a necessary expense. I wouldn't spare any cost to keep you safe." He paused, looking down quietly before continuing. "Besides, I have a duty to make up for my lack of judgment." Later that afternoon, I quickly packed the essential sentimental items, important documents, and my mother's photographs. I informed Kathy and Chris that I was moving to take care of my grandmother, whose health had supposedly worsened. Well, that's tough. Kathy pretended to be concerned, but her eyes clearly sparkled with joy. "But taking care of the elderly, you are such a kind-hearted girl, Madison." "Indeed, very admirable," Chris agreed. "If you need help, I'm here too." Watching their performances, I felt something inside me freeze. Was this truly family? The way of family my mother taught me was not like this. The detective agency my father hired, Hansen Detective Office, was one of the best in the city for investigation capabilities. The chief detective, Sam Hansen, a veteran with 30 years of experience, was especially skilled in investigating financial fraud. First, we'll look into all financial transactions over the past 5 years. Sam explained in our first meeting. Then, we'll thoroughly check Kathy and Chris's backgrounds. The investigation proceeded around the clock. Detectives took turns surveilling our house and documenting Kathy and Chris's activities. At the same time, they delved into their past records. Once a week, my father received updates from Sam. I was sometimes allowed to sit in on these meetings. Each time we read the reports, my father's expression grew darker. Kathy has been married twice before, Sam reported. Both were to wealthy businessmen, and she received a substantial settlement at each divorce. Particularly concerning is that her second husband declared bankruptcy shortly after their divorce. There's also troubling information about her son, the report continued. There are suspicions that he swindled a large amount of money from a previous stepfather. The evidence has been destroyed, but according to witnesses at the time. The most shocking part was the ongoing fraud. Kathy and Chris had started withdrawing small amounts from my father's account soon after the marriage. While the amounts were small individually, they added up to a significant sum over 5 years. And what's more serious is this. Sam showed a document. There are traces of loans taken out with forged signatures of Mr. Brown at multiple banks. My father stared at the document silently for a long time. Watching him, I felt a deep ache in my heart. He must have been painfully aware of his previous oversight. Life at my grandmother's house turned out to be more healing than I expected. The house, dating back to the old era, was filled with a nostalgic atmosphere. My grandmother, though 83, was still vigorous. She watered the flowers in the garden every morning and knitted in her favorite chair in the afternoon. Gradually, I found myself blending into her tranquil daily routine. Your mother used to spend a lot of time here when she was young. My grandmother told me one day, showing me an old album. She particularly liked this chair. She loved reading books. Looking at photos of my mother as a young university student, serious while studying, and on her first date with my father, I discovered facets of her I never knew. It was a life of my mother's that I never knew, yet it undoubtedly existed. Your mother was a strong woman. My grandmother quietly told me. No matter how tough things got, she never gave up. You really do resemble her. Those words gave me great courage. Until now, I had been consumed by overcoming my mother's death and felt I had lost sight of what she had passed on to me. But now, I could feel her strength flowing within me. The seasons turned, and Thanksgiving Day was approaching once again. Over the past year, my father had steadily gathered evidence and prepared legally. He had also consulted repeatedly with his lawyer, Robert Thompson, devising a perfect plan. The best timing would be after the Thanksgiving dinner. Robert had suggested, revealing the facts when the family is gathered will make the subsequent legal proceedings smoother. On Thanksgiving Day, I felt a heaviness in my stomach from the morning. Like last year, Kathy was busy preparing an extravagant meal. The scent of roasted turkey filled the house, and traditional Thanksgiving dishes like pumpkin pie were laid out on the table one after another. This year's dinner will be special, Kathy said proudly. Only my father and I knew the true meaning behind her words. Dinner began, and the familiar scene unfolded. My father carved the turkey, Chris poured wine, and Kathy served the other dishes. On the surface, it was the perfect picture of family togetherness. As dessert time approached, my father quietly began, "Kathy, Chris, there's something we need to discuss." They looked at him, unaware of what was coming. Slowly, my father opened his business bag and began to take out documents one by one. The first thing he pulled out was the audio recording from last year's Thanksgiving night. Kathy's face drained of color. Next came bank transaction records and evidence of forged signatures. Then, the detailed investigative report from the detective. Everything was spread out on the table. "What is all this?" Kathy asked with a trembling voice. "You should understand without having to be explained," my father said calmly. "Here we have all the evidence of what you two have done." Chris suddenly stood up, shouting, "This is a misunderstanding." But his voice already bore the tone of defeat. "A misunderstanding." My father asked Esily, "What exactly is misunderstood here?" "The forged signatures. The unauthorized withdrawals from my account." The atmosphere froze. Kathy tried one last time to defend herself, her face contorting slightly. "You're doubting us? After all these 5 years we've—" "Those 5 years were a lie," I said quietly but firmly. "I learned of your true nature during the night of last year's Thanksgiving." The room was enveloped in a heavy silence. Kathy and Chris were at a loss for words, their faces pale. What followed was swifter than expected. My father's legal team, utilizing their years of experience, efficiently organized the vast evidence and progressed with legal procedures. Financial records, forged documents, and recorded conversations, these decisive pieces of evidence made the court proceedings smooth. Kathy and Chris initially cried and desperately denied the facts, trying every means to defend themselves. However, they were powerless against the evidence. Particularly damning was the revelation of their past fraudulent activities. It was proven that they had repeatedly deceived others using similar methods and stolen assets. When these facts were read in court, Kathy turned pale, and Chris looked down, trembling. The court handed down a harsh verdict. They were ordered to return all unlawfully obtained money and pay substantial damages. Additionally, they both received criminal records for fraud, completely destroying their social credibility. Their lives changed drastically. Forced to move from a luxury apartment to a cramped flat, the luxuries they had once taken for granted became unreachable. Chris struggled to find work. His criminal record for fraud prevented him from securing decent employment, and he moved from one part-time job to another. Having never seriously worked before, he lacked the endurance for long hours and low wages. Yet, he had no other choice in his current situation. As for Kathy, she was forced into a life of solitude and modesty, starkly opposite to her previous glamorous existence. The luxury goods Kathy once splurged on, the fine dining at high-end restaurants, and the extravagant vacation trips are now nothing more than a distant dream. Even in her small apartment kitchen, she managed to cook efficiently, but there was no one to share her meals with. Once her criminal record became known, her former friends started avoiding her, and now she is completely out of touch with them. The reality of being shunned by everyone was a profound humiliation for Kathy. Why did this happen to us? This was something I heard from an acquaintance about Kathy later on. Her tone contained more anger and lamentation at the injustice she felt than any real remorse. It seemed she still did not think their actions were wrong. Meanwhile, my father decided to sell our house. "This house is filled with too many memories, both good and bad," he said, as he quietly signed the paperwork. "Let's start a new life in a new place. Now, our family lives in a new home in the suburbs. The life I share with my father and grandmother is quiet and serene, yet filled with warmth. The wounds of the past haven't completely healed. However, knowing the truth and seeing justice served has allowed us to start moving forward gradually. Sometimes, my father says to me, 'I am truly grateful for your courage, Madison.' If I hadn't recorded that evidence on that Thanksgiving night and consulted him immediately, our situation today would have been entirely different. Now my mother's photo is displayed prominently in the living room. It seems to watch over us, symbolizing the heart of where our family gathers. Occasionally, I speak to her picture. 'Mom, I managed to have the courage to do the right thing.' And next week, another Thanksgiving Day will arrive. This time we can truly celebrate with gratitude. With my father, myself, and my grandmother. I am now certain of what a real family looks like. Life sometimes moves in unexpected directions. Yet, if you live honestly and with courage, you will always see the light. This is the most important lesson I've learned through these experiences. The words my mother said at the end, "Be happy," still live on in my heart. And I am convinced that now, having overcome these experiences, we are truly starting to walk toward real happiness. From a young age, I always felt like I was second best, like a shadow that was always trailing behind someone brighter and more beloved. My name is Anne. I am the younger of 2 daughters in our family, and for as long as I can remember, I have stood in the glow of my older sister Stacy. I always felt as though I was in the background. The stark contrast in the way our parents treated my sister and me was unmistakable and impossible to overlook. While Stacy was escorted to singing competitions and exclusive gatherings at my parents' club, I was left behind at home, quietly working on my homework in solitude. Being 3 years older than me, she naturally stood out and commanded attention wherever she went. It was as if she was destined to receive all the attention, treated like it was her rightful due. Because of that, it always felt like my parents' focus was solely on her. If a teacher mentioned her talent, my parents never missed the chance to nurture it. They did everything they could to bring out the best in her, while I felt like I was hidden in the shadows. Our family was not financially well off, making it difficult to afford Stacy's lessons and equipment. However, her singing voice was so captivating that my mother proudly boasted about her talent to everyone, believing she would achieve great success in the future. On the other hand, whenever I tried to show my own talents, I felt discouraged from expecting too much. When I told my mother about my interest in art, she gave a faint, apologetic smile and replied hesitantly, "Let's hold off until next semester. Stacy's vocal lessons are already costing us a lot." The disparity became even more pronounced when Stacy entered her senior year of high school. One evening when I was 15, during dinner, my parents revealed a big decision they had made. "We've been saving up carefully," they explained. Then my father added proudly, "We've decided to send Stacy to Preston College." It was one of the most prestigious schools in the state. Excitement was written all over Stacy's face. "That's absolutely wonderful," my mother added enthusiastically. "And that's not all. You can use our apartment near the campus. You won't have to worry about rent and can focus entirely on your studies." Upon hearing this, I silently pushed the peas around on my plate. There was no need to hide how I felt, because no one cared about me anyway. All the attention in our house was directed toward Stacy's bright and cheerful face. Her smile stood out, and it felt as though my existence was fading away. That night, as I lay in bed, I could hear Stacy talking excitedly about her dreams. She spoke animatedly about her future plans and aspirations, while my mind began calculating. Having seen how much money my parents had spent on Stacy's tuition and living expenses, along with providing her a free apartment, I started to think calmly about how I could fund my own education. Gradually, I began to realize that in this situation, I couldn't expect the same kind of support. When I fully grasped that reality, it hit me hard. But instead of breaking down in tears, I started planning my next steps. The next day, I decided to visit my grandparents' antique shop. When I explained my situation to my grandfather, he listened intently. "Anne, if you're serious about this, I might be able to help a little with your college expenses," he said. He rested his hand on his chin thoughtfully, pausing for a moment. "But I think it would be good for you to gain some experience earning your own money. How about working here after school?" And so, everything began to move forward. While Stacy was busy packing for her prestigious university, I started working at the antique shop every afternoon after school. At the shop, I helped organize inventory, assisted with catalog creation, and even interacted with customers. Under my grandfather's guidance, I gradually learned the basics of running a business and developed new skills. Meanwhile, my grandmother warmly supported my busy days, often bringing me snacks and sharing stories about the history of the vintage items in the shop. Through those stories, I learned the importance of an item's value and history, and I slowly began to understand the significance of the work I was doing. When I told my parents about my decision to save up for college on my own, they didn't seem surprised. Instead, they looked relieved, as though they were reassured by my determination to find my own path. The 3 years I spent working at my grandparents' antique shop turned out to be incredibly valuable and meaningful to me. Every afternoon, I diligently dusted old furniture and meticulously sorted through vintage jewelry at the shop. Over time, without realizing it, I developed a keen sense of efficiency and an appreciation for aesthetics. By the time I graduated high school, I had managed to save enough money from my earnings to fund my college education. It was also thanks to my grandparents paying me a higher hourly wage than others. That seemed to be their way of showing kindness. My graduation celebration wasn't a flashy event, just a quiet dinner with my family, but it felt like enough. I took immense pride in having worked hard to get this far without relying on any special assistance. For college, I chose a local state university and opted for a practical business program that allowed me to make the most of my savings. Through this choice, I felt confident about taking the first solid step toward my future career. The tuition at the state university was affordable, and I was even able to save a little money. I continued living at home and took the bus to campus, a modest choice but a logical one to reduce financial strain. "Dad, Mom," I began one evening, summoning my courage. "I'm thinking of buying a used car. It would make getting to class a little easier." Without lifting his gaze much from his smartphone, my father replied flatly, "Sorry, Anne. We don't have the means right now." My mother quickly added, as if to smooth things over, "Isn't the bus enough? Plenty of students use it." Reflecting on all the support they had given me so far, I found myself unable to respond. Instead, I silently carried a deep sense of gratitude in my heart. There were countless moments when I felt how fortunate I was to have their support. Each time, an inexpressible sense of thankfulness would well up inside me. Stacy had gotten her driver's license a long time ago, and I still vividly remember the time she received her car. Back then, I had just finished my first year of college and was relieved to have made it through my spring finals. But at that time, our house was filled with a special excitement and energy. The reason was that Stacy had finally graduated from Preston College and was about to move on to the next stage of her life. To celebrate Stacy's graduation, my parents organized an elaborate party, inviting relatives, friends, and neighbors. The days leading up to the event were a flurry of preparations, with every detail carefully planned. On the big day, the house was alive with activity, buzzing with people who had come to honor Stacy's success. It was filled with cheerful smiles, lively conversations, and an atmosphere of pure celebration. I was in the kitchen, engrossed in arranging appetizers on plates, when Stacy suddenly walked into the room. Next to her was Joe, the boyfriend she had dated during her college years. The two of them entered the room, leaning into each other as if they didn't have a care in the world. The scene was like something straight out of a movie, with natural smiles spreading across both Stacy and Joe's faces. Everyone around was captivated by their glow, and in no time, their presence commanded the room's attention. As they entered, Stacy addressed everyone gathered with a cheerful expression. "I'm engaged to Joe." The room erupted in cheers and congratulations, suddenly filling with a warm and bright atmosphere. Mom, overwhelmed with emotion, had tears welling up in her eyes as she looked at Stacy. Dad, on the other hand, expressed his joy by giving Stacy a hearty pat on the shoulder. The pat was so forceful that for a moment I worried Stacy might lose her balance. Still, in that moment, family and friends celebrated together, and a warm sense of unity filled the air. However, even in this joyous moment, an unexpected event was still waiting to unfold. The surprising moment came when Joe began to speak. He started talking in a gentle, sweet voice, and his words surprised everyone and left a lasting impression. After the wedding, we're planning to move to Connecticut. My parents run a very successful business there, and they've invited us to join them. We're set to take it over. Hearing this, Mom's tears flowed even more freely, falling in large drops. My daughter and her husband are embarking on such an amazing path, she murmured emotionally. Dad puffed out his chest and said in a proud, booming voice, "I always knew you'd achieve something great." I stood quietly in the corner of the room, watching the scene unfold. No one seemed to acknowledge that I had completed my first year with a perfect 4.0 GPA, all while juggling school and a part-time job at a local cafe. But I had grown accustomed to that. During my second year of college, much of my time was spent helping prepare for my sister's wedding. Even so, I diligently pursued my studies and progressed. My parents devoted themselves to planning a perfect wedding for their child. They took out substantial loans for the venue, catering, flowers, music, and more. No expense was spared for Stacy and Joe. The wedding itself was a grand and emotional affair, with Stacy shining as the star of the day. After paying for my bridesmaid dress myself, I wore it proudly and watched my parents dance happily, feeling proud of them. They had spared no expense in creating a wonderful wedding. After Stacy and Joe moved to Connecticut, I understood the reality that my parents would be repaying the loans for years. That evening, as I was watching TV, Mom came up to me and said, "I need you to start paying for living expenses." I was a little taken aback by the sudden request. What brought this on? I almost blurted out the thought in my head, "You gave Stacy a free apartment." Dad sat uneasily in the recliner he rarely used. The wedding loans were still outstanding. Even though they had a little breathing room now, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I spoke with a slight tremble in my voice. "I've never once asked you for anything. I've worked part-time to pay for my tuition and taken the bus everywhere." Mom raised her hand to stop me. Then she and Dad exchanged a silent look, the kind they often shared when deciding how much to spend on Stacy's other activities. After a while, I responded, "Fine." Mom said I would need to pay $1,300 a month. I wanted to argue further, but I knew it would be pointless. "All right, I'll pay $1,300 a month." From that month on, I began paying $1,300 in living expenses each month. To afford it, I picked up extra shifts at the cafe. I often worked between classes or stayed until closing. Balancing work and studies left me with almost no time to sleep. My final year of college passed in a blur, carrying textbooks and my cafe apron. Every night, I stayed up late studying. Before I knew it, graduation day arrived. While my classmates prepared for grand parties and celebrations, my parents decided on a quiet dinner at home, inviting only my grandparents. Unlike Stacy's lavish catering, we sat around the dining table eating homemade lasagna. Grandma reached across the table to gently take my hand. "Dearest Anne, I'm so proud of you," she said softly. "Graduating with top honors while working part-time is truly remarkable." Before I could respond, Mom's phone buzzed, and her face lit up as she read the message. "Speaking of success," Mom interjected, "Stacy just texted me. She said their business is doing great. They're planning to expand to 2 new locations." I watched as my graduation dinner transformed into a celebration of Stacy's success in Connecticut. Grandma and Grandpa exchanged glances as if they sensed something. Grandpa gently placed his hand on my shoulder. My hard work in college bore fruit sooner than expected. Less than 2 weeks after graduating, I was hired by Anderson Mitchell, one of the top firms in the city. The starting salary was higher than I'd imagined, and I felt excited about the career that lay ahead. Daily life soon settled into a routine, and I became deeply focused on proving my value at work. Still, every month, Mom reminded me about the living expenses. "Don't forget to pay on Friday. We're counting on that money." And just like that, 3 years went by. I received a major promotion and was assigned to work abroad for a year. For me, it was the perfect opportunity, not just professionally, but also to finally leave my parents' house. I could hardly contain my excitement. At last, I wouldn't have to stress about covering my living expenses anymore. Still, one lingering concern continued to weigh heavily on my mind. The matter centered around my dog, Max. Leaving Max behind was a bittersweet reality I had to face, but it was a necessary decision for the sake of my job. My biggest worry was finding the right person to take care of him in my absence. Max was an important part of my family, and I wanted to leave him with someone I trusted. After much deliberation, I decided to ask my parents to take care of him. I thought that would put my mind at ease, but another issue arose. My parents told me I'd need to pay $1,300 a month for Max's care. At first, I was shocked and wanted to push back. However, after hearing their reasoning, I began to understand their perspective. They explained that they had their own lives, and that taking in Max and caring for him long-term wouldn't be easy. They pointed out that caring for a dog required time and effort, including daily walks, meals, and vet visits, which justified the cost. Although the expense felt burdensome, I realized that Max's health and happiness were my top priorities. I concluded that paying $1,300 a month was a necessary step to ensure Max was well cared for. Once the payments to my parents were settled, I began preparing for my new life overseas while keeping a watchful eye on Max's well-being from afar. During my assignment abroad, I heard the news that Stacy and Joe had welcomed a baby boy. I saw their photos shared on social media, but I never made the effort to visit them in person. By then, our interactions had dwindled to nothing more than the occasional birthday messages and Christmas greetings. That arrangement was working fine, but one phone call changed everything. Anne. My mother's voice was trembling. I need to talk to you about Stacy. There's been a problem, and it seems their business has collapsed. On top of that, Joe had a serious falling out with his parents. They're furious about how he managed things, and apparently they haven't spoken in days. I closed my eyes, sensing what was coming next. Stacy said she's coming back to live at home. She also mentioned something about Joe and the baby. I see, I answered quietly. Mom seemed to be thinking for a moment. Anne, is it okay if I clear out your room? It sounded as though the decision had already been made. Stacy and Joe need to set up a nursery for Daniel. And where am I supposed to sleep when I return? There's a perfect sofa in the living room, Mom replied. It seemed like the move was already finalized. You're joking, right? Why my room? Mom's tone turned sharp. Stop being so selfish, Anne. Stacy has a baby. That baby needs a proper room. With those words, I had no choice but to accept that my room would be overtaken by a crib and other baby items. My belongings were hastily piled into a corner of the living room. With my sister's family moving back into the house, space became cramped, and that's when my parents brought up another demand. They wanted me to double the payment for Max's care. They argued that having Stacy's family around increased their workload, and the cost of caring for the dog needed to match that. The proposal left me both shocked and slightly perplexed. While I thought I could manage $1,300 a month, doubling that amount was far too much for me to bear. Additionally, with my sister's family moving back, I started to worry if Max could stay comfortable in the changing household environment. I told them I needed time to consider it, and then ended the call. That night, I turned on my computer and began searching for apartments. I shortlisted a few promising places within walking distance of my workplace. I told myself I needed to be prepared for the worst-case scenario. After careful consideration, I made a calm decision to leave home and take Max with me. Since my overseas assignment was nearing its end, it felt like the perfect timing. I was certain that bringing Max back to live with me was the best decision for him. When I shared my choice with my parents, their reactions were a mix of surprise and concern, but I stood firm and didn't waver. I genuinely believed that staying with me was what would make Max happiest. Later, I picked him up and moved into my new apartment. I ordered takeout and sat on the bare living room floor. The day I picked Max up from my parents' house was the last time I saw my family. I simply said goodbye and left. I didn't experience any guilt. I simply felt a sense of peace. In the calm of my new apartment, I spent quiet days settling in and adjusting to my new life. I bought a comfortable bed, a soft couch not meant for sleeping, and my own kitchen tools. Although I wasn't entirely used to the new place, work was going well, and Max and I enjoyed fulfilling days together. About a month later, my mother called me. Without any preamble, she launched into an angry tirade. "Why haven't you sent the money? Don't you think you should honor your promises?" she demanded. I laughed and replied, "What Stacy needs right now is to take full responsibility for herself. I've taken Max, moved out, and am paying rent for my own apartment, so I no longer have an obligation to pay living expenses. Stacy should be the one handling that." What did you just say? Do you have any idea what kind of situation Stacy is dealing with right now? It doesn't matter to me what kind of situation Stacy is in. It's time for her to step up, work, and take responsibility for her own living expenses. I'll be keeping an eye on how things unfold. After I spoke, there was silence on the other end of the phone. I could feel the reality sinking into her mind, as if I could hear her organizing her thoughts. Her once steady source of income was gone, leaving only an unemployed daughter who had never paid a single bill. Anne. Suddenly, Mom's voice softened, with a sweetness I recognized from when she used to ask for favors when I was a child. "Don't rush. Can't we figure this out together? Why not come back home and live with us? That would be the fairest arrangement, wouldn't it?" I leaned back into the new couch I had carefully chosen for myself. This was my apartment, and no one could complain about anything here. Sorry, but that's not happening. But Anne, we're family, aren't we? Family? I could hardly believe she had the audacity to say that. Without thinking, I cut her off mid-sentence. Family? You tried to give my money to Stacy without telling me. You turned my room into a nursery and left me to cover all the bills by myself. You treated my life like an ATM and Stacy like royalty. How is that a family? Goodbye. I hung up and immediately blocked their number. That was 6 months ago. Grandma and Grandpa have kept me updated on their situation, but I never ask for details. They understand what I need and know that I made the right decision. Stacy, Joe, and Daniel still live at the house, contributing nothing to the household expenses. I've heard that my parents are struggling to get by with the loan still unpaid. They've even gone around asking relatives for money, but the truth about how they favored Stacy over me has spread. No one is willing to lend them anything. Of course, my grandparents haven't offered any support either. In fact, I've heard they've taken steps to ensure their inheritance doesn't go to my parents. Stacy, with a small child, still hasn't found a job, and Joe reportedly has no motivation to work. As for me, my new life is peaceful. I recently got another promotion at work, bought a new car, and started attending evening MBA classes. My apartment is always neat, with the fridge stocked full of fresh ingredients, ready for whenever I feel like cooking. Each night, I now drift off to sleep peacefully in my own bed. Just the other day, I bumped into one of Joe's relatives at the grocery store. She mentioned casually that they were expecting another baby. I responded with a simple smile and wished them all the happiness in the world. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought about how my parents might be figuring out how to cover daycare costs for the new baby. However, that's no longer something I need to worry about. For the first time, I'm putting myself first, and it feels undeniably like the right choice. Emotionally, it was a complex journey, but I stand firm in the path I chose and have no regrets about my decision. With Max by my side, I am genuinely content and excited about the new life that lies ahead. Under the icy December night sky, I stared at the sight of my beloved SUV crashing into a telephone pole. Snow began to cover the car's body, and the chrome decorations glistened coldly like ice. This scene seemed to foreshadow the impending collapse of our family. However, to tell this story, I must start from much earlier, for the distortions within our family began long ago. My name is Kristen Carlson. This story might seem to revolve around a dispute over a car on the surface. In reality, however, it is a record of the long-standing distortions in my family erupting all at once. The car was merely a symbol. The events surrounding it mercilessly brought to light the truths we did not want to see. Within what appeared to be a peaceful family, everyone's grievances, secrets, and scars overflowed from that night onward. Looking back, that night was a turning point for our family. In my family, there was an unspoken but recognized hierarchy, and at its pinnacle stood my brother, Jonathan. From birth, Jonathan received all our parents' affection. His arrival was a miracle for my parents, who had struggled with infertility. However, when I was born unexpectedly a year later, the joy of my parents was not as profound as it had been, as my grandmother later confided to me. "Your mother wanted a boy," she said. After Jonathan was born, her wish was fulfilled. You were an unexpected gift. This unexpected gift continued to be treated as an extra. Everything Jonathan wanted was given to him, his failures were forgiven, and even his violent actions were dismissed with a laugh, because boys will be boys. Issues related to Jonathan in our family were always swept under the rug for special reasons, but if I did the same, I was immediately scolded. One of my earliest memories is of a doll I received on my 5th birthday. I vividly remember the day Jonathan broke the doll that I had cherished and displayed. "Your brother was just curious," my mother said, dismissing my tears. "It's your fault for not taking care of your things." Such unreasonable situations were my daily reality. My possessions were also Jonathan's. My books, my toys, my time, all were taken away under the pretext of, for my brother's sake. Yet, as a child, I wanted to believe that my family loved me. Otherwise, the daily reality was simply too sad. Even at school, I could not escape Jonathan's influence. He was athletic and popular, while I was a quiet student who often spent time in the library. I felt as if I had no place anywhere, but the quiet library was my sanctuary. However, I always maintained top grades. Perhaps that was a desperate attempt to be recognized. I hoped that by being special in some way, my family would finally see me. "Kristen, why can't you be like your brother?" my father often said. "Jonathan is proactive. Everyone likes him. But you..." His words trailed off, but the meaning was clear. No matter how hard I tried, Jonathan's shadow never faded. Our parents treated such situations as if they were the norm. "Because he's your brother. Because we're family." These words constantly suppressed my feelings. It was considered the norm in our family, and nobody questioned it. No matter how much I internally resisted, the atmosphere that did not allow me to raise my voice was ever present. And gradually, I realized that in this family I was just existing. On my 18th birthday, I left home. Carrying only a small bag, I left the house before dawn, and strangely, I felt a sense of relief. When I gently closed the door of the house, I felt as if I had been released from the overwhelming pressure that had crushed me. I didn't look back, only walked forward. From somewhere in the distance, the sound of birds chirping could be heard, and as the faint light began to illuminate the sky, a realization quietly surged within me that I was starting a new life. The one who welcomed me was my paternal uncle, Douglas. I had vague memories of meeting him when I was young, but since then, there had been little interaction. Nonetheless, as a former police officer, he had long been concerned about my family's situation. This goes back to the time when my family visited Uncle Douglas's house when I was a child. By chance, Uncle Douglas overheard my parents praising Jonathan while dismissing me. "Kristen is a bit too introverted, isn't she? Can't she be more outgoing like Jonathan?" my father said, to which my mother laughed and replied, "Well, she's a girl, so maybe that can't be helped." Although Uncle Douglas didn't pursue the matter deeply at the time, he occasionally checked on me afterward. Sometimes he would call and ask, "Is Kristen all right?" But my parents would lightly dismiss it, saying, "Oh, she's all fine." His concern turned into conviction when I appeared on the list of top students published by my middle school. Uncle Douglas happened to see it and wanted to praise my efforts, but he was faced with my parents' cold response when he contacted them. "Kristen's grades are good, but more importantly, Jonathan is doing well in his new sports team," they said, changing the subject. At that moment, Uncle Douglas realized how I was being treated within the family. Ever since then, Uncle Douglas had secretly resolved to always extend a helping hand whenever I reached out for help. When I reached out to him at the age of 18, he welcomed me without hesitation. His home was filled with a calm atmosphere I had never experienced before. The walls were adorned with photographs he had taken during his active days, and the bookshelves were lined with police-related books and magazines about his hobby, fishing. Everything seemed to reflect his personality, and each detail felt fresh to me. "Here you can be yourself," Uncle Douglas told me, providing me with a small room. Though modest, the room was furnished with warm wooden furniture and soft curtains, creating a comforting space. That night I cried tears of joy for having my own space for the first time. I buried my head in the pillow, unable to contain the emotions I had been holding back. Uncle Douglas gave me his SUV, which he had used during his time as a police officer. It wasn't in perfect condition, but the engine was robust, and the interior was well maintained. "I have a special attachment to this car," he said softly, caressing the hood. "Kristen, I believe you will take good care of it." The car became more than just a means of transportation for me. It symbolized freedom and independence, a testament to my new life. Every time I drove, I felt like I was stepping into a broader world. The feel of the steering wheel, the vibrations from pressing the accelerator, all of it reminded me that I was alive. Polishing the car before going to work became my daily ritual, almost like meditation. As I wiped the body with a cloth, I felt my mind gradually aligning itself. The sound of the engine starting seemed like a heartbeat filled with hope. I vividly remember the coldness of the wind and the sense of freedom when I first drove the car through the city. Life with Uncle Douglas gradually healed my spirit. During dinner times, we would laugh over stories from his days as a police officer and his fishing trips. Those peaceful moments became incredibly precious to me. I wasn't used to being loved, but Uncle Douglas was always on my side, respecting my existence. For the first time, I began to understand what it meant to be myself. The days spent in his home were shaping a new form of family for me. "Family is determined by bonds, not blood." Uncle Douglas's words deeply resonated with me. Meanwhile, Jonathan's life was filled with turmoil. In high school, he was celebrated as a star athlete, but things did not go well for him after entering college. Initially, he received a scholarship and led a glamorous life as a member of the American football team, but his lack of focus on practice and indulgence in flashy play led to poor grades. Eventually, he was forced to drop out after 2 years. He drifted through various jobs afterward, none lasting long due to conflicts with supervisors or criticisms of his lack of responsibility. Jonathan always boasted, "I can do bigger things," but reality did not accept him. His irresponsibility manifested in his personal life too, causing problems with speeding and drunk driving, and leading to the destruction of 3 cars. The worst incident was when he completely wrecked the last car by crashing it into a telephone pole. After that, the insurance company refused to renew his contract, and he could no longer own a car. However, his obsession with cars remained. This fixation eventually led his gaze to my cherished SUV. On Christmas night, I was spending time with my family at my parents' house for the first time in a long while. The reason I visited my estranged family was a letter from my mother. As the year-end approached, she had sent a brief letter saying, "It would be nice if we could spend time together as a family." The content was simple, but I couldn't gauge the emotion behind it, and decided to attend after some hesitation. Perhaps I hadn't yet mustered the courage to completely cut ties with my family. Snow quietly continued to fall outside the window, enveloping the surroundings in a white, silvery world. The living room was warm with the fireplace burning, and the table was set with roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, and green bean casserole, creating the appearance of a perfect family gathering. My mother carried a cake from the kitchen, and my father poured wine, both in high spirits, but I sat there feeling uneasy. Jonathan seemed to act as if nothing was wrong, but every time his gaze turned toward me, a sense of wariness spread through my heart. I had noticed his interest in the SUV long before. A few weeks before Christmas, we had accidentally reunited. One holiday, as I was having lunch at a cafe near Uncle Douglas's house, Jonathan suddenly appeared. It seemed that the apartment he was living in at the time was near Uncle Douglas's house, and he had spotted me by chance. "Kristin, you live around here." He sat down with a surprised look on his face. At first, I was cautious, but Jonathan started chatting in his usual lighthearted manner, asking about my life. It was then that I noticed his gaze shifting towards my SUV parked in the lot. "Hey, Kristin, is that car yours?" he pointed out, his eyes lighting up. "It was a gift from Uncle Douglas," I replied, and Jonathan nodded in admiration. "It's a nice car. It has a strong feel that I love. I'd like one like this someday, but it's just not possible right now," Jonathan said, his gaze hinting at something beyond mere curiosity. Even during our casual conversation, it became evident that he was fixated on it. This brief reunion made me aware of Jonathan's interest in my SUV. Perhaps that's why, on Christmas night, I had a lingering anxiety that he might target it. The incident occurred towards the end of the night. After the family had retired to their rooms, I was the only one left in the living room. As I stared into the fireplace, lost in thought, I suddenly realized that my car keys were missing. They were nowhere to be found in my bag. A sense of unease quickly turned into a foreboding feeling. I rushed to the window and saw that the space where the SUV had been parked was now empty. I felt the blood drain from my face. I hurriedly grabbed my phone and opened the tracking application Uncle Douglas had installed. The screen flashed with the indication that the car was moving several miles away. Jonathan had taken my car keys without me noticing and stolen my cherished SUV. I later learned that he needed the car to go to a party with friends. Why he would do such a thing, why he wouldn't even borrow a car from someone else but instead use mine without permission, swirled through my mind. But before I could seek answers to these questions, the urge to retrieve the car overcame me. And as I had feared, under the influence of alcohol, Jonathan mishandled the car and crashed on the icy road. I took a taxi to the scene, where I found the SUV smashed against a telephone pole and Jonathan being led away by the police, still drunk. Seeing that sight tightened a knot in my chest. The car, handed down from Uncle Douglas, was precious to me. More importantly, it was a symbol of my freedom, and to see it destroyed in such a way was unbearable. However, what shocked me even more was the reaction of my parents. They had arrived at the scene before me, and were attempting to lie to the police officers, saying, "The car belongs to our daughter. She was driving. Our son was just caught up in it." The motive was clear. They were willing to sacrifice me to protect their son. My daughter Kristin was driving, my mother explained shakily to the officer. She got a bit panicked. We came to help her. At that moment, I felt as if my blood had turned to ice. The family distortion I had faintly sensed up until now was starkly evident. My parents had never really intended to protect me. Any slight hope I had for my family evaporated in that instant. Feeling a surge of anger building inside, I decided to call Uncle Douglas. He answered immediately, and upon hearing my situation, he said he would come right away. Knowing Uncle Douglas had connections with the police, I hoped that his arrival would help stabilize the situation. After a while, Uncle Douglas arrived at the scene. As a former police officer, he assessed the situation calmly and quickly spoke to the officers. One of the officers at the scene happened to be a former colleague of his. I'm aware of what happened here. Jonathan was driving a stolen car. He began his testimony. Uncle Douglas's statement, surveillance footage from the scene, and the tracking records of my car all matched, clearly proving that Jonathan had stolen the car. Subsequently, the police conducted a more detailed investigation, and Jonathan was arrested for driving without a license and under the influence. His actions resulted in a suspension of his license for over a year, a fine of several $1,000s, and a criminal record. Then, the discussion about the car repair cost began in a more contentious atmosphere than anticipated. Under the fluorescent lights of the body shop, my father's face looked more severe than usual. Jonathan offered to pay all the repair costs. It must have been a significant decision for him. However, my parents objected to his decision. "There's no need for that," my mother said with a trembling voice. "We're family, we should share the burden." That statement cut through something inside me. Emotions I had suppressed for years overflowed like a dam bursting. "Enough is enough," I shouted. "Why do you always protect him?" I had no choice but to leave home, to go to Uncle Douglas's house, all because of you guys. You're covering for him even after he stole my car, and you even tried to lie to the police, and now, when he's finally trying to take responsibility, you're still interfering. What's the family about this? The shop fell silent. At that moment, a customer waiting for repairs muttered under his breath, "Oh my goodness." Typical parents who hinder their child's growth. That comment snapped my father's restraint. He attacked the stranger, later identified as Michael Fisher, with unchecked aggression. My father's fists mercilessly struck Michael's face, slamming him against the wall. I was frozen with fear. The violent tendencies my father had shown at home were now exposed to the outside world. As the staff called the police, my father, in a panic, left my mother behind and fled. After being detained for several weeks, he was released. During his detention, he was ordered to undergo a mandatory anger management program. The program included cognitive behavioral therapy and group therapy, and it definitely changed my father's condition. Meanwhile, Jonathan also paid a heavy price. He faced a criminal record, paid hefty fines, and received a suspension of his driver's license for over a year. This series of experiences seemed to have a significant impact on him. He became like a different person, actively trying to mend our relationship. He reached out almost weekly, deeply reflecting on his past actions and repeatedly apologizing. However, his relationship with our father did not improve. Instead, the distance between them only grew. In particular, their shared criminal records seemed to push them further apart. The most shocking change was my mother's transformation. After the arrests of my brother and father, she became like a different person. Her attitude towards me became cold, and her anger intensified. She started to blame everything on me, and her words were piercing. "If you had just lent him the car from the beginning, none of this would have happened. Kristen, you destroyed our family. Are you satisfied with ruining our reputation?" Each of these accusations deeply wounded me. Finally, I decided to completely cut off my relationship with her. I no longer wanted to accept her hurtful words. My feelings for my mother cooled, and I crossed a line that could never be undone. My grandparents, who had heard the whole story from Uncle Douglas, reacted in a way no one expected. They made the severe decision to disinherit my parents. Those who should protect the family but instead break it do not deserve our trust or our estate, my grandfather stated, deeply hurting my parents' hearts. This decision fundamentally changed my parents' lives. Without the inheritance from my grandparents, my parents lost the financial comfort they had taken for granted. They had relied on the anticipated wealth and assets to sustain their lavish lifestyle. However, with that foundation gone, their lives were transformed. They were forced to give up their luxuries and adapt to a more modest lifestyle. Thus, my parents began to harshly feel the consequences of their past actions. Later, When my grandparents approached me about the inheritance, I took my time to consider it. Since money was one of the factors that broke my family, I want to thoroughly assess how I live my future. Jonathan and I now meet once a month, and knowing that he is sincerely working on his rehabilitation, I can see his growth. He participates in an alcohol dependency treatment program and has found stable employment. Seeing him commuting by bicycle is unimaginable from his once arrogant demeanor. I'm ashamed of my past self, he admits, accepting his mistakes and trying to move forward. Our relationship is slowly rebuilding at a gentle pace. Meanwhile, my father has also started to confront his emotions. He actively participates in anger management sessions, delving into the roots of his violent tendencies, gradually reflecting on his past actions, and showing signs of remorse. However, my relationship with my mother remains frozen. Sometimes I feel a desire to mend our relationship, but each time her words echo in my mind, and I choose to keep my distance. The scars from the past are not easily healed. Facing financial difficulties, my parents have had to significantly revise their previous lifestyle. My mother started a part-time job, and my father now takes extra shifts on weekends to supplement their income. It's painful to see them struggle, but at the same time, this experience seems to be teaching them humility. While keeping my distance, I continue to observe their changes. My mother has sent me emails apologizing, but I have not yet replied, nor am I in a hurry to do so. My father completed his anger management program and now participates in community volunteer activities on weekends. This was recommended by his counselor as a way to control his anger. His help in coaching sports for young people has completely erased his previously intimidating demeanor. His expression now shows a certain calmness and sense of responsibility, making him seem like a different person from before. The settlement with Mr. Fisher, who was a victim of my father's violence, has also been resolved. My parents continue to pay compensation, which has become a significant financial burden, but it seems to be a necessary atonement. While their efforts to fulfill their past responsibilities are commendable, regaining trust is not something that can happen immediately. The bonds of family can sometimes be a strong force that unites us, but can also be chains that bind us. However, I have learned that having the courage to break those chains can pave the way for a new future. Uncle Douglas taught me that people can change, but the process of changing is not always comfortable. It can be painful and often requires significant sacrifices. Knowing this, I want to live my life not to meet someone else's expectations, but for myself. I don't know what the landscape will look like this time next year. Nevertheless, as I gaze at the SUV enveloped in snow, I quietly resolve not to be bound by the past and to move forward at my own pace. Rebecca Manning, now 28, still experienced a sharp pain in her stomach as the end of the year approached. Sipping her cold coffee, she looked at her smartphone screen. 7 missed calls, all from her mother. Her apartment was small, but it was her own space. After graduating from university, she had just started working as a copywriter at an advertising agency, finally achieving financial independence. The job was busy but fulfilling. Having control over her own time was a luxury that, after years living with her family, seemed priceless. As she hesitated to answer the phone, Rebecca reminisced about past Christmases. They were supposed to be fun gatherings, but for her, they always followed the same pattern. While the adults laughed and shared wine, she was invariably tasked with taking care of her cousins. Over the years, it had become an obligation, a right her family took for granted without considering her feelings. Rebecca put down her coffee cup, took a deep breath, and answered the phone. "You finally picked up," said her mother, Debbie, her voice carrying its usual hint of mild reproach. "I called you several times." "I was at work, Mom." In reality, she had noticed the calls after work was already over. She just wanted to delay talking to her mother. "What are your plans for Christmas?" Debbie asked. Her voice had a scheming tone, and Rebecca grew wary. "Usual stuff. planning to go to the family home like always. Well, this year is going to be a bit different. What do you mean? Rebecca frowned. Aunt Sandra has come up with a wonderful idea. All of us adults are going on a Caribbean cruise from Christmas to New Year's Day. Isn't that great? While she said all of us, it was clear Rebecca was not included. Me too? She checked. Oh, about that. Debbie hesitated. You have a different important role. Rebecca's stomach tightened further. What role? Taking care of Nicole, Chris, and Alex. They're still too young for a cruise. Wait, so you want me to look after an 11-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 4-year-old for a whole week while everyone else sunbathes and sips cocktails in the Caribbean? Don't put it like that. You get along well with the kids, and you don't have plans for Christmas anyway, right? Plus, you don't have your own kids, so this will be a good experience for you. Rebecca felt a shiver of anger. Mom, I have my own life. I have plans with friends and work deadlines. But it's for the family. Besides, the tickets are already bought. They're non-refundable. Rebecca fought the urge to hang up, maintaining her composure. When were you planning to consult me? Or did you assume I'd just agree? Of course I didn't think you'd say no. You've always been a good girl, always doing everything for the family. Mom, I'm not a child anymore. Rebecca spoke calmly. I have the right to control my own time. I'm saying no. There was a pause on the other end. Rebecca, don't just think about yourself. This is supposed to be a special vacation for the whole family. Except for me, Rebecca retorted. I can't believe your selfishness is ruining everyone's fun plans. Selfish? You're the ones who planned without consulting me, expecting me to be happy to sacrifice a whole week. Isn't that selfish? That's enough. I'll get your father to call you. You'll listen to him. Before the call ended, Rebecca declared, if I'm expected to babysit, I won't be coming home for Christmas. It was unclear if her words reached her mother. That night, Rebecca felt restless in her apartment. Her phone rang continuously with calls from her parents, all of which she sent to voicemail. There was also a short text from her Uncle Richard. Rebecca, won't you think about the family? She smirked with disdain. In my family, thinking about the family always meant sacrificing myself to fulfill the wishes of others. Sitting on the sofa, Rebecca called her friend Gina. She was well aware of Rebecca's family situation. So, are they trying to make you babysit again? Gina asked immediately after answering the phone. This time it's different. I said no. I don't have to go along with what they decide on their own. Good for you. You've always been too accommodating to them. You have the right to have time for yourself. But it seems they haven't given up yet, Rebecca sighed. My dad keeps calling. Don't answer, Gina advised. Your answer isn't going to change, right? They're just trying to change your mind. Thank you. I'm not wrong, am I? Absolutely not, Gina asserted. You're an adult. You have the right to have your decisions respected. After hanging up, Rebecca boldly answered a call from her father. Dad, my answer hasn't changed, she stated without preamble. Rebecca, James's voice was calm. We just want you to show some compassion for the family. Me, lacking compassion? You guys don't respect my time or plans. All right, let's spend this year apart then. But could you come just for Christmas morning? The kids really want to see you. Rebecca was skeptical, but her father's proposal sounded reasonable. All right, I'll come for Christmas morning only. But stop asking me to babysit. I promise. Thank you, Rebecca. After hanging up, Rebecca was slightly uneasy. It felt unnatural how easily her father had acquiesced. However, she was satisfied that she had made her boundaries clear. In the weeks leading up to Christmas, Rebecca kept contact with her family to a minimum. Only occasional text messages came through, and there was no more talk of babysitting. She was relieved, yet couldn't shake the suspicion that something was off. On Christmas Eve, before going to bed late, she texted her parents, "I'll arrive around 11 tomorrow morning. Merry Christmas." The reply came quickly. It was from her mother. "Understood, Rebecca. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow." Rebecca smiled. Her relationship with her family had been complicated for a long time, but she was ready to reconcile in the spirit of Christmas, while still maintaining her boundaries. The next morning, Rebecca woke up early, carefully wrapped the presents, and loaded them into her car. She had chosen the gifts for the children with special care. For Nicole, a set of the latest young adult novels; for Chris, a Lego set; and for Alex, the stuffed animal he had wanted. On the way to her parents' house, Rebecca felt calm. Christmas songs played on the radio, and she hummed along. Today will be a good day. A short visit, see everyone, hand out the presents, and then back to my own time. However, when she parked in front of her parents' house, something felt off. There was no sign of her parents' car, Aunt Sandra's, or Uncle Richard's. The house lights were on, but it lacked the usual Christmas buzz. Rebecca frowned as she approached the front door with the presents. The doorbell rang, and she heard little footsteps running. The door opened, and Nicole appeared. "Rebecca," she exclaimed joyfully. "You came." Of course, Rebecca smiled and hugged her. "Merry Christmas, Nicole. Where is everyone?" "They all went out," Nicole answered innocently. "Mom and Dad and the others went on a trip." "You are going to take care of us, right?" Rebecca froze. "What did you say?" "Rebecca." Chris and Alex ran up and hugged her. "Did you bring presents?" Rebecca tried to smile at the children, but inside she was trembling with anger. "Yes, of course. Let's bring these into the living room first." As she led the children to the living room, Rebecca looked around. The house was neatly decorated, and presents were stacked under the Christmas tree. On the table, there were leftovers from breakfast and a note. While the children were engrossed in their presents, Rebecca picked up the note. "To Rebecca, we left on the 9 a.m. flight. We prepared breakfast for the children. There is a week's worth of meals in the fridge. Please follow the instructions. Emergency contact numbers are also on the fridge. Put Alex to bed by 7 p.m. Nicole and Chris should go to bed at 8:30 p.m. With love, Mom." They had ignored Rebecca's clear refusal and tricked her into taking care of the children. The children innocently opened their presents, cheering. Rebecca knew it wasn't their fault. Her anger should be directed at her parents and her aunt and uncle. "I need to make a call. I'll be right back." She went to the kitchen and called her mother's cell phone. After several rings, her mother finally answered. "Oh, Rebecca. Have you arrived? How are the kids? What were you thinking?" Rebecca couldn't contain her anger. "How could you do something so underhanded after I clearly said no?" "Rebecca, calm down," Debbie said soothingly. "We knew you would come. You're a responsible person. I'm not your babysitter. I only said I'd come for Christmas morning. I never agreed to take care of the kids for a whole week. But you're there, aren't you? You can't just leave now. The kids are relying on you. This is clearly child neglect." Rebecca's voice turned cold. "Do you know what would happen if I called the police?" There was a gasp from the other end of the line. "You wouldn't do that, would you? Want to try me? If you're not back soon, the next call I make will be to the police." "Wait." Debbie panicked. "We're still at the airport. The flight hasn't left yet. Then cancel it and come back. I'm staying here for 1 more hour. If you're not back by then, I'm taking the kids to the police station." "Rebecca, please." 1 hour, Rebecca repeated and hung up. With her heart pounding, Rebecca returned to the children. "Hey everyone, your dad and the others will be back soon. Why don't we have some fun until then?" The children eagerly agreed. Rebecca played board games with them, read Christmas stories, and ate cookies. She made sure not to let her anger show to the children. 45 minutes had passed since her ultimatum. She was contemplating whether she should really call the police. But it turned out to be unnecessary. 50 minutes later, she heard cars approaching, and from the window, Rebecca saw her parents' car and the cars of Aunt Sandra and Uncle Richard arrive. "Look, everyone's back." The children ran excitedly to the door. She grabbed her bag and watched as the children reunited with my parents and aunt and uncle. "Rebecca." Debbie approached her. "I don't need an explanation. I'm leaving." "But it's Christmas," Debbie pleaded. "Let's spend time as a family." "Family? Now I know what you think of me. Just a convenient tool. Don't use me ever again." She said goodbye to the children and quietly left through the back door. Before getting into her car, she noticed yelling coming from inside the house. It was James scolding Debbie and Sandra. Rebecca took a deep breath and drove off. Her heart was a mix of anger and sadness, but she also felt a strange sense of liberation. She had finally stood up for herself. The day after Christmas, Rebecca spent a quiet morning in her apartment. She responded promptly to messages from friends, but did not reply to any from her family. After the events of the previous day, she wanted to keep her distance. However, in the afternoon, while casually checking Facebook, her heart clenched with anger. Her mother, Debbie, had posted, "It was a sad Christmas. It hurts to know someone doesn't care about their own family." The children were disappointed, and the plans were ruined. "I never thought our family bond could be so fragile." The post had many comments. "What a pity, Debbie. The younger generation lacks responsibility. They can't even think about the children. Family is the most important thing. It's sad when someone doesn't understand that." Trembling, Rebecca took screenshots. Her mother had not named her explicitly, but it was clear the post was about her, and it completely twisted the truth. Driven by anger, Rebecca composed a lengthy post on her own Facebook page. "It's time to set the record straight. Yesterday, I visited my family home for Christmas. However, upon arrival, my parents, aunt, and uncle had already left for vacation, expecting me to take care of 3 children for 1 week. This was despite my explicit refusal. I threatened to report them for child neglect, and they reluctantly returned. I have been accused of not caring about my family. In reality, it is they who do not respect my time and choices. I am neither their toy nor a free babysitter available at their convenience. Family is about mutual respect. One-sided demands and manipulation do not qualify as such. Publishing this might irreparably damage her relationship with her family. But she felt a need to speak the truth. With trembling fingers, she pressed post. The reactions were immediate. First, Gina commented, "You did the right thing." Then, messages of support from other friends followed. Surprisingly, responses from her family also began to arrive. The first reply came from her grandfather, Frank. "Rebecca, can you call me? We need to talk." Shortly after, her grandmother Barbara commented, "Debbie, James, Sandra, Richard. I am disappointed in you all. You should apologize to Rebecca." Knowing that her respected grandparents were on her side provided Rebecca with some relief. She quickly called her grandfather. "Rebecca," his voice was warm. "That was rough." "Yes, Grandpa. It was really awful. I've spoken to Debbie. Her actions are inexcusable, as are James's. Sandra and Richard are also equally to blame. Everyone's blaming me. Like I'm the villain. They are wrong," her grandfather stated firmly. "You only protected your rights as an adult." Their actions were also irresponsible towards the children. "I don't know what to do. Keep your distance for now. They need time to reflect. Your grandmother and I will handle things appropriately with them." Rebecca thanked her grandfather for his support and hung up. However, her relief didn't last long. That night, her social media overflowed with criticism from her family. Debbie accused Rebecca of shamelessly airing family issues in public. James advised Rebecca to grow up. Sandra and Richard blamed her for betraying the family. Then, a wave of critical comments from other cousins, aunts and uncles followed. At the same time, Rebecca's post unexpectedly spread further. Not only her Facebook friends but also their friends shared it, and many people sympathized with her situation. "I've had similar experiences. Just because they're family doesn't mean you have to continue a disrespectful relationship, and you acted correctly," were among the hundreds of supportive comments she received. All night, Rebecca's smartphone kept buzzing with notifications. Eventually, she turned it off and went to sleep. The next morning, she was woken up by a call from Gina. "Rebecca, things have blown up. Your post is being shared everywhere. Some blogs have picked up your story." "What?" Rebecca rubbed the sleep from her eyes and quickly turned on her phone. Notifications flooded in, and she was overwhelmed. Her post had been shared thousands of times, and many people shared their similar experiences. Several online news sites even picked up her story, discussing family boundaries. She had wished to remain anonymous, but the situation had spiraled beyond her control. "I didn't intend for this." "But a lot of people are resonating with you," Gina said. "The experience you shared is something many have silently endured." That afternoon, another shocking development occurred. Her mother Debbie posted anew. "I need to clarify the situation. My previous post was emotional. My husband, my brother-in-law, and I had unfair expectations of our daughter Rebecca. We did not respect her wishes and tried to use her as a free babysitter. Her reaction was completely justified. Henceforth, I publicly apologize here." Rebecca was astounded. Her mother apologizing publicly was unthinkable. But the reason soon became clear. Rebecca received a text message from her grandfather. "Debbie and I spoke. Their behavior was shameful. Your parents, Aunt Sandra, and Uncle Richard have agreed to publicly apologize to you, Rebecca. However, I feel that this is not enough. They have been using you for a long time. I think we should consider taking this matter to a legal standpoint." Rebecca frowned. A legal standpoint? She thought that might be going too far. However, her opinion quickly changed. That night, Rebecca continued to ignore calls from her mother but decided to open an email from her father. The contents infuriated her. "Rebecca, we have apologized publicly. But you also need to reconsider your actions. Threatening to call the police for child neglect is excessive. We just wanted you to look after the children for a few days. Your overreaction has embarrassed the entire family. I will no longer allow you to attend family gatherings, Dad." After reading this email, Rebecca's anger reached its peak. They had apologized superficially, but in reality, they continued to blame her and even tried to exclude her from the family. She immediately called her grandfather. "Grandpa, Dad just sent me this email." Her grandfather was visibly angry upon hearing about the email. "This is unacceptable. They haven't learned anything. Rebecca, you should consult with a lawyer. This is harassment." Encouraged by her grandfather's advice, Rebecca met with a family law attorney the next day. The lawyer listened carefully to her situation and pointed out that the issues were more serious than Rebecca had initially thought. "Mizu Manning, this isn't just a simple family dispute," attorney Vanessa Gale said. "The behavior of your parents and aunt and uncle can be considered psychological harassment. Especially, the defamation on social media against you could potentially be libelous." "Should I really sue?" Rebecca asked. "Let's start by sending them a warning letter. We'll notify them that if they continue this harassment, legal action will be taken." Rebecca agreed, and the lawyer sent a formal warning to her parents, Aunt Sandra and Uncle Richard. However, this action further escalated the situation. After receiving the warning letter, Debbie became even more aggressive. She posted on social media that Rebecca was an ungrateful daughter trying to sue her family. James described Rebecca as emotionally unstable and stated that her claims were exaggerated. Sandra and Richard joined in, criticizing Rebecca for always seeking attention and claiming her story was a complete fabrication. These posts were the last straw for Rebecca. She consulted with her lawyer again and decided to file a lawsuit for defamation and emotional distress. Ms. Manning, I understand this decision isn't easy, Attorney Gale said kindly, but it's necessary to protect you. On the day the lawsuit was filed, Rebecca was overwhelmed with mixed emotions. She loved her family, but their actions were unforgivable. This was not just a one-time event, but a pattern of exploitation and lack of respect that had gone on for years. Her grandparents fully supported Rebecca's decision. They even offered to testify on her behalf in court. Nicole, Chris, and Alex were too young to fully understand the situation, but Rebecca continued to communicate with them, showing her love. The legal proceedings lasted for months. During this time, Rebecca's family relationships completely fractured. Her parents, Aunt Sandra and Uncle Richard cut off contact with her, while the rest of the family was forced to take sides. Many relatives sided with her parents due to family unity, but her grandparents and a few cousins supported Rebecca. The trial progressed more quickly than expected. Rebecca's lawyer clearly presented the long-term pattern, the Christmas incident, and the subsequent harassment on social media. The testimony of her grandparents was particularly effective, as they detailed the history of how Rebecca had been treated within the family. The most shocking evidence was the screenshots of social media posts by Debbie, James, Sandra, and Richard, and records of the insulting messages they had sent to Rebecca. These clearly demonstrated malicious harassment. The judge ultimately recognized Rebecca's claims, issuing a restraining order against her parents and aunt and uncle, and awarded significant damages for defamation and emotional distress. Furthermore, they were ordered to retract their false online statements about Rebecca and post an official apology. The court finds that the actions of Debbie Manning, James Manning, Sandra Miller, and Richard Miller constituted clear harassment of Rebecca Manning and caused severe emotional distress, the judge stated sternly. Family relationships should be based on mutual respect, and the defendant's actions have violated this fundamental principle. As she left the courtroom, Rebecca felt a complex mix of emotions. She had won her case and successfully defended her boundaries, but she also felt sorrow for possibly losing part of her family forever. "You did the right thing," her grandfather said as he hugged her. "Time may heal some things, but you always have the right to know your worth and protect your dignity." Several weeks after the verdict, the lives of Rebecca's parents and aunt and uncle changed drastically. The trial was covered by the media, severely damaging their reputation in the community. James lost the trust of his colleagues and was pushed into early retirement from the company where he had worked for 35 years. Debbie was asked to resign from her position in the PTA and completely lost her standing in the community she belonged to. The couple became socially isolated and began living a life far from their previous luxuries. The small store run by Sandra and Richard saw a decline in customers, and they began facing financial difficulties. The poor reputation from social media spilled over into the offline world, and one by one, their regular customers left. Within 6 months, they were forced to close the store. They fell behind on their mortgage and eventually had to move to a cheaper apartment in the suburbs. Rebecca maintained a careful relationship with her grandparents and the children, but had no contact with her parents or aunt and uncle. When Nicole turned 18, she left her parents' house and moved in with Rebecca. Chris and Alex gradually began to distance themselves from their parents as well. Their care, it seemed, had been left to outside babysitters since Rebecca left. 10 years later, Rebecca had a successful career and was surrounded by her true family, her husband and daughter she had chosen herself. She had gained her freedom for the first time by breaking away from her biological family. Occasionally, the pain of the past would hit her, but each time, she reassured herself that her choices were right. "I have no place in my life for those who treated me like a tool," she told her therapist. "It might sound harsh, but it was necessary to protect myself." The wounds inflicted by her family never fully healed, but Rebecca continued to walk her path with pride. The fate of her parents and her aunt and uncle served as a harsh lesson to those who continuously exploit others.